All right, so are you ready to unlock the secrets to speaking English fluently?
I think everyone's ready for that.
I know I am. We're going to be diving deep into this guide, 9 secrets to speaking English fluently and easily.
Sounds good to me.
And hopefully we'll be able to break down the techniques that'll help anyone reach fluency.
Yeah, because who doesn't want a cheat sheet for fluency?
Exactly. Cut through the clutter, get right to what works.
And what I think is really cool about this guide is that it's not your typical textbook stuff.
Oh, really?
It's like it dives into the mindset
Oh, wow.
and the strategies you need to actually make it happen in the real world.
So it's not all about just memorizing verb conjugations and all that.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So let's jump right into the first secret then, embracing the learner's mindset.
Okay?
Sounds pretty basic, but what does that actually look like, in practice?
It's all about seeing those stumbles, those fumbles, those inevitable mistakes as like opportunities to learn.
Okay.
Instead of like beating yourself up over them.
Yeah.
Like imagine you're learning to play a really complex piece of music on the piano.
Oh, gosh.
You wouldn't expect to just nail it on the first try, would you?
Definitely not. I'd be hitting all the wrong notes, probably.
Exactly. And each one of those like mistakes, they're giving you valuable feedback. They're telling you, okay, adjust your technique here, and eventually you'll get to that flawless performance.
I like that analogy a lot.
And language is so similar.
Oh, yeah.
Like every time you kind of mess up, you're actually gaining these insights into how this amazing language works.
That's true.
I remember when I was learning Italian,
Oh, yeah.
I kept using the wrong preposition for this one particular sentence structure.
Oh, gosh.
And it was so frustrating. But instead of giving up, I decided to really analyze it, like what was going on there. And you know what? I ended up discovering this subtle little nuance that I had completely missed before.
Oh, wow.
And my understanding of prepositions just like skyrocketed after that.
That's a perfect example of how just reframing those mistakes can lead to these breakthroughs.
Totally.
But how can someone listening actually cultivate this learner's mindset? Like, what are some practical things they can do?
Well, this guide actually gives a couple of really good practical methods.
Okay.
One is to start a progress journal.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Just take a few minutes each day to jot down what you've learned, maybe what went well, what you struggled with.
Okay.
Because then when you look back and you see how far you've come, it's incredibly motivating.
I love that. I love the progress journal idea because it's like a tangible record of your growth.
Yes.
Especially on those days where you feel like, I'm not getting anywhere. You can look back and be like, wow, I've come a long way.
It's so powerful.
Yeah. What about rewarding yourself for those wins, even the small ones? Does that tie into this?
Oh, absolutely. Celebrating those milestones helps reinforce positive learning habits.
Okay.
And it keeps you motivated, whether it's a small treat
Yeah.
or watching an episode of your favorite show.
Yeah.
Even just taking a break to do something you enjoy. Those little rewards, they go a long way.
I like that. All right, so let's move on to secret number 2. Speaking as often as possible, even if you're alone.
Okay.
I have to admit, I've definitely caught myself having conversations with my plants in English before.
I think we've all been there.
But, is that actually helpful?
It might sound a little silly,
Yeah.
but there's actually some solid science behind this.
Okay.
Because every time you speak, you're engaging those muscles that are involved in producing those specific sounds.
I've never thought about that.
It's like working out at the gym, but for your vocal cords and your brain.
Oh, wow.
I remember when I was getting ready for a big presentation in Spanish,
Okay.
and I was pretty nervous about it, so I started practicing out loud, even when I was alone in my apartment.
You were just talking to yourself.
Yeah, I would pace around talking to this imaginary audience, asking them questions, responding to their reactions.
Oh, wow.
It felt a little awkward at first,
Yeah.
but the more I did it, the more natural it became.
So it's all about building that muscle memory.
Yes.
Getting your brain and your mouth used to forming those sounds.
Exactly.
Cool. And the best part is you can do it anytime, anywhere.
All right.
Narrate your day, have these imaginary debates, sing along to English songs. Just get those words flowing.
Exactly. Just find those opportunities to speak and let it flow.
Speaking of flow, that leads us perfectly into the next secret.
Okay.
Which emphasizes the power of listening. Why is listening so important for fluency?
Well, think about how we all learned our first language. We spent months, maybe even years, just absorbing those sounds and patterns
Right.
before we ever even uttered a word.
Yeah.
So listening, it's really the foundation upon which we build our understanding of any language.
You know what? I've actually noticed that when I spend a lot of time watching movies or TV shows in English, my pronunciation and intonation actually improve.
Interesting.
It's like my brain's subconsciously picking up on those nuances.
Yeah, it makes total sense.
Yeah.
It's like you're immersing yourself in the language.
Right.
Even if it's just virtually.
Yeah.
And this guide, It actually has some great suggestions for maximizing your listening practice.
I'm assuming podcasts are one of them.
Oh, podcasts are amazing.
I love podcasts.
And there's honestly something for everyone.
Yeah.
Like, if you're interested in news analysis, you could try The Daily from the New York Times.
Okay.
Or if you want, like, science and storytelling, there's this really cool podcast called Radio Lab.
I've heard of that one, yeah.
And if you're looking for something a little more humorous,
Okay.
I highly recommend My Dad Wrote a Porno.
That sounds hilarious.
So funny.
Okay, I'll have to check that one out. And of course, we can't forget about music.
Of course not.
Such a great way to not only pick up new vocabulary and idioms and slang, but also just to kind of get that pronunciation and intonation in a fun way.
Right. Because it's way more fun than just doing drills.
Yes, exactly.
Singing along.
So much more enjoyable.
Much better.
Okay, now let's get into the nitty-gritty of language learning.
All right.
Secret number 4, chunking and collocations.
Love these.
Can you break down for us what those are and why they're so important for fluency?
Okay, so imagine you're building a house.
Okay.
It would take forever if you had to lay each brick one by one, right?
Yeah, that would be very time-consuming.
Chunking and collocations are like having these prefabricated walls and roof sections.
Oh.
So you could assemble things much faster
Okay.
and create a more, like, cohesive structure.
I'm liking this analogy. So instead of focusing on individual words, we should be looking for these chunks of language.
Yes. And these chunks are called collocations.
Okay.
They're so common in English.
Okay.
For example, we say heavy rain,
Okay.
not strong rain.
Oh, that's interesting.
Or make a decision,
Yeah.
not take a decision.
I see. I think I do that sometimes.
And that's where these collocations come in. They help you sound more natural and fluent by using combinations that native speakers just instinctively use.
Yeah, because I noticed that sometimes, like, I know all the vocabulary, but I can't quite figure out how to put them together in the right way.
Exactly.
So how can listeners start incorporating these chunking and collocations into their routine?
So one really simple technique is to create what's called a phrase notebook.
Okay.
So as you're reading or listening and you come across these collocations, just jot them down in your notebook,
Okay.
along with their meanings and maybe some example sentences.
I like that. And I would assume that these space repetition apps we talked about earlier would also be helpful for this.
Oh, they're amazing for this.
Yeah.
Because space repetition helps move information from your short-term memory to your long-term memory
Okay.
by presenting you with that material at gradually increasing intervals.
Gotcha.
So it's like having a personal trainer, but for your vocabulary.
Nice. Okay, let's move on to secret number 5. And this one might be reassuring to our listener.
Okay.
It's okay to simplify your sentence structures, especially at the beginning.
Especially at the beginning.
Does that mean we don't have to worry about grammar?
No, grammar's still important.
Okay.
But fluency isn't about trying to build these, like, super complex sentences right away.
Right.
Actually, using shorter, simpler sentences can make you sound more confident and more fluent,
Interesting.
especially when you're still developing your skills.
So it's more about clarity and conciseness than trying to, sound super smart with your grammar.
Exactly. Imagine you're explaining, like, a really complex concept to someone.
Okay.
It's way easier to understand if you break it down into smaller, bite-sized chunks, right?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely get caught up sometimes trying to construct these elaborate sentences, and it just ends up sounding confusing.
It happens to the best of us.
Yeah.
So there's a really simple technique from the guide.
Okay.
You start with a basic sentence,
Uh-huh.
like, I enjoy reading.
Okay.
Then you gradually add details and complexity.
Oh, I like that.
So you could say, I enjoy reading books about history,
Okay.
and then expand it further. I enjoy reading books about history, especially biographies of influential leaders.
So you're building upon that simple sentence
Yes.
without making it overly complicating.
Exactly.
So it's finding that balance between clarity and complexity
Yes.
and, starting simple and then gradually working your way up.
That's the key. And don't be afraid to experiment and see what feels more natural for you.
Yeah,
You might find that certain sentence structures are easier for you to produce than others.
right.
The important thing is to keep practicing, keep refining those skills,
Practice makes perfect, as they say.
or at least progress.
Or at least progress, yeah.
That's the goal.
Exactly.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the secrets of fluent English.
So we've already uncovered some really cool strategies so far.
Yeah, we're just getting started.
But I mean, I'm always up for more tips and tricks, you know what I mean? What else does this guide have in store for us?
It talks a lot about staying curious
Okay.
and, like, making your learning engaging.
I can definitely see how that would be important. Like, if you're genuinely interested in something, it's got to be way easier to stay motivated, right?
Exactly. It's like instead of slogging through those boring textbook exercises,
Oh, yeah.
you're exploring subjects that actually pique your curiosity,
Right.
whether it's, technology, sports, global news.
Okay.
Even something like cooking or fashion.
Ooh, fashion.
That's a good one.
Like, imagine diving into the world of, like, fashion magazines and blogs and documentaries all in English.
Yeah.
You'd not only be picking up new vocabulary, but you'd also be gaining these insights into, like, cultural trends and perspectives.
Totally. That's exactly what it's all about.
Okay.
And it brings us to another important aspect of fluency, cultural immersion.
Oh, okay.
Because language is so much more than just, words and grammar.
Right.
It's a reflection of a culture's values, its history, its way of life.
I like that. So by immersing ourselves in English language media, we're kind of getting a deeper understanding of the culture that shapes the language.
Yeah, it's like you're getting this backstage pass to how native speakers actually think and express themselves.
That's cool. So it's not just about memorizing vocabulary lists. You're connecting with, like, the heart and soul of the language.
Yes, exactly.
I love those aha moments. When you finally grasp a tricky grammar concept.
Yeah.
Or you effortlessly use a new idiom in conversation.
The best feeling.
But this guide really emphasizes, like, acknowledging even the small victories.
Yes.
Those tiny steps forward that might seem insignificant at the time. Why is that so important?
It's all about maintaining motivation and momentum.
Okay.
Because language learning, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
For sure.
And there are going to be times when you hit a plateau, you feel discouraged.
Yeah, definitely been there.
But if you can train yourself to recognize and appreciate those tiny little sparks of progress,
Okay.
it makes all the difference in staying the course.
It's like those fitness trackers that celebrate every 1,000 steps you take.
Yes.
Even if you haven't quite reached your daily goal yet.
Exactly. It's like those little nudges of encouragement.
They can be really motivating.
Very motivating. And it's important to celebrate those wins in a way that works for you.
Yeah.
So maybe it's treating yourself to a fancy coffee or watching an episode of your favorite show.
Okay.
Or just taking a moment to savor that feeling of accomplishment.
I like that. Okay, so we've talked about staying curious, immersing ourselves in the culture, celebrating those small wins.
Yeah.
What about the practical side of things? Like,
Okay.
how does this guide recommend structuring our study time?
It offers this sample weekly plan
Okay.
that emphasizes a balance between focused study
Uh-huh.
and then real-world application.
I like that.
And of course, you can tailor it to your own needs and preferences.
Right.
But the general idea is to dedicate specific blocks of time
Okay.
to different aspects of language learning.
Got it. So, for example, Mondays could be for grammar review
Yes,
and maybe practicing conversation with a language partner.
perfect. Exactly. Then midweek, you might focus on expanding your vocabulary,
Okay.
maybe by learning new collocations
Oh, yeah.
related to a topic that you're passionate about.
Cool.
You could read articles, listen to podcasts, even watch documentaries on that subject,
Uh-huh.
and actively jot down any interesting phrases or expressions that you come across.
I like that. And maybe Fridays could be for, like, fine-tuning pronunciation through drills or shadowing exercises.
Exactly. And don't forget to leverage the weekend for immersive experiences.
Okay.
Maybe you attend an English language meetup,
Oh, cool.
or you watch a movie without subtitles,
Oh, that's a good one.
or you just chat with a friend in English.
Okay.
Those real-life interactions are so valuable.
Yeah, it sounds like the key is to create a routine that works for you and then stick to it consistently.
Absolute consistency is key.
Okay, but let's circle back to those 9 secrets for a second.
Okay.
And see if there are any specific strategies that we haven't really touched on yet.
Okay.
I know we talked about chunking and collocations in the first part.
Yeah.
Any additional tips on how to really master those?
One thing this guide emphasizes is the importance of context.
Okay.
So don't just memorize collocations in isolation.
Uh-huh.
Try to encounter them in their natural habitat, so to speak.
Okay.
Pay attention to how they're used in articles, books, movies, conversations.
It's like learning a new dance move. You can watch videos and try to mimic the steps,
Yeah.
but it's not until you actually get out on the dance floor
Yeah.
and try it out in a real setting that you truly understand how it works.
I love that analogy.
That's what it feels like sometimes.
Yeah, the more you encounter those collocations in those authentic contexts,
Okay.
the later you'll understand their nuances and how to use them effectively.
Okay, so context is key. What about those of us who tend to overthink our sentences
Yeah.
and get stuck in grammar land?
Oh, yeah.
Any advice for overcoming that?
The guide reminds us that fluency is not about grammatical perfection.
Okay.
It's about conveying your message clearly and confidently.
Uh-huh.
even if your sentences aren't perfectly structured.
So it's better to speak like a slightly imperfect sentence fluently
Yes,
than to stumble over a grammatically perfect sentence.
exactly. And remember that technique we talked about earlier, sentence expansion?
Oh, yeah.
You can start with a basic sentence and gradually add details and complexity as you become more comfortable.
I like that. So the key is to prioritize clarity and flow over grammatical intricacy.
Especially in spoken English, yes.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm curious about those techniques we discussed for refining pronunciation, like reading aloud and shadowing.
Yeah,
Any additional tips for getting the most out of those?
absolutely. When you're reading aloud, try to focus not only on the accuracy of your pronunciation,
Okay.
but also on the rhythm and intonation of the language.
So it's not just about saying the words correctly, but also about capturing that natural flow and expressiveness.
It's like adding musicality to your speech.
Oh, I like that a lot. And what about shadowing?
Okay, so one helpful tip is to break down the audio clip into smaller chunks.
Okay.
So instead of trying to shadow a whole podcast episode,
Right.
you could start with a short segment, maybe a minute or two.
Okay.
Listen to it several times, paying attention to the speaker's pronunciation and intonation. Then pause the audio and try to mimic the speaker as closely as possible.
Gotcha. So it's like practicing a short musical phrase on an instrument,
Yeah.
getting each note and nuance just right before moving on to the next phrase.
I love that analogy. It's perfect. And just like with music practice, consistency is key.
Okay.
Even a few minutes of shadowing practice each day can really improve your pronunciation and fluency over time.
I know we've talked about setting SMART goals, but sometimes the sheer scope of language learning can feel overwhelming.
Yes.
Any advice for like breaking down those fluency aspirations into more manageable chunks?
The guide suggests setting smaller, more specific goals
Okay.
that align with your overall fluency objectives.
Okay.
So, for example, instead of simply aiming to improve my vocabulary,
Yeah.
you could set a goal to learn 10 new collocations related to travel each week.
I like that that's much more concrete and measurable.
Yes, exactly. And it feels much more attainable than just saying, I want to learn all the English words.
Right. And it's still contributing to that broader goal of fluency.
Exactly. And don't forget to track your progress.
Oh, yeah.
Whether you use a notebook, a spreadsheet, a language learning app, having that visual representation of your achievements can be so motivating.
For sure. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this segment, exploring all these practical tips and strategies for boosting fluency.
We have.
But before we move on to our final thoughts,
Okay.
I want to circle back to that concept of balance for a second.
Okay.
We've talked about balancing focused study with real-world application.
Right.
But what about balancing the different elements of language learning itself?
That's such a good point. Remember that three-legged stool analogy we discussed earlier?
Oh, yeah.
Fluency is built on that solid foundation of grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation.
Uh-huh.
And neglecting any one of those areas can weaken that entire structure.
It's so tempting to focus on the areas we enjoy most.
Yeah.
Like, I love reading, so I could spend hours reading English novels
Yeah.
or binge watching TV shows, but then maybe I neglect those grammar exercises or pronunciation drills.
Yeah, it's natural to gravitate towards what we find enjoyable.
Yeah.
But it's so important to find that balance
Okay.
that ensures that you're dedicating sufficient time and attention to all three legs of the stool.
So how can our listener make sure they're maintaining that balance?
The guide suggests creating a cyclical practice schedule
Okay.
where you alternate between those different areas of language learning.
Okay.
So, for instance, you might focus on grammar exercises and conversation practice on Mondays,
Okay.
vocabulary building and writing on Wednesdays,
Gotcha.
and pronunciation drills and listening comprehension on Fridays.
So you're cycling through
Exactly.
and hitting all those different areas.
Yes. And of course, you can adjust the schedule to fit your own preferences and learning style.
Right. It's all about finding what works for you.
That's the key.
That's a great reminder because it's so easy to get caught up in one aspect of language learning and neglect the others.
Yeah.
But just like with a balanced diet, variety is key for overall fluency health.
I love that analogy. Variety is key.
All right, so here we are at the final part of our fluency deep dive.
Yeah, we've explored 9 secrets, a whole bunch of strategies. Now we just got to bring it all together.
So it's like our fluency action plan, ready to go to put it all into practice.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So what are the key takeaways, the biggest ha moments from this whole guide?
You know, one of the most powerful ideas is that fluency. It's not like this finish line you cross. You know? It's this ongoing process. It's a journey of discovery and growth.
I like that because then you can enjoy the process and celebrate those milestones.
Exactly. And it kind of ties in with that whole learner's mindset thing. You know, it's shifting away from that fear of making mistakes.
Right.
To being curious about what you can learn from those mistakes.
Yeah.
When you're not afraid to stumble, you're more likely to experiment, take risks,
Totally.
and really immerse yourself.
But mistakes can be discouraging sometimes, especially when you feel like you're stuck.
Right.
So how can our listener, use this guide to kind of break through those plateaus?
Well, immersion is key.
Okay.
This guide really emphasizes surrounding yourself with English as much as possible.
Yeah.
So podcasts, movies, music, even social media.
Yeah, I've been really into documentaries lately.
Oh, nice.
And there are so many good ones in English. It's like a great way to learn about different topics and improve my listening at the same time.
That's awesome. And remember the power of real-world interactions.
Right.
Whether it's through language exchange apps or conversation clubs or just chatting with friends.
Yeah.
Those authentic experiences, they're so essential.
So it's putting those skills to the test in the real world.
Exactly. Which can be a little scary at first, but the more you do it, the more comfortable you'll get.
Right. Okay, so let's go back to one of the most practical strategies from the guide, chunking and collocations.
Yes.
Like, it's such a good way to sound more natural and fluent.
I think such.
Instead of searching for the individual words, you just have these ready-made chunks.
It's like a secret weapon.
Exactly. So the more you see these collocations in real situations, the better you'll understand them.
Exactly. So it's not just about memorizing those lists.
Right.
It's about observing how those phrases are used in real life.
Yeah.
Like noticing how a character in a movie uses a particular phrase.
Yeah.
Or paying attention to the word combinations in a news article.
So paying attention to those little things.
Exactly. And for those who get kind of bogged down by the grammar,
yeah.
remember fluency. It's not about perfection.
So it's okay to start with those simpler sentences.
Absolutely. And gradually add that complexity as you get more comfortable.
Right. Just focus on getting your message across.
Yes.
Okay. And then last but not least, those techniques for refining pronunciation, reading aloud and shadowing.
Those are good ones.
Any final tips to make those even more effective?
So when you're reading aloud, try to really embody the language.
Okay.
Pay attention to that rhythm, intonation, the pauses, the emphasis, like you're an actor delivering a line.
Oh, channeling your inner Shakespeare.
Exactly. And when you're shadowing, focus on those smaller chunks.
Yeah.
Listen really closely to how that speaker is shaping those sounds and try to mimic them.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to record yourself. And then listen back.
Because sometimes it's eye-opening.
It's like, whoa, that's what I sounds like.
Exactly. And when it comes to staying motivated, remember those specific achievable goals.
Those SMART goals, right?
Yes.
But don't just vaguely aim for fluency.
Right.
Break it down into those smaller steps.
Exactly. So, for example, you could say, I'm going to learn 5 new idioms related to work this week.
Okay.
Or I'm going to practice shadowing for 10 minutes each day.
Okay.
Because those concrete targets, they'll help you stay focused.
And track that progress, so you can see how far you've come.
It's encouraging, especially on those days when you're not feeling so motivated.
Totally. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, got to bring it back to balance one last time.
Yes.
Fluency, grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation. Make sure you're nurturing all three.
All 3 legs of the steel.
Exactly. So, if you're spending hours and hours on vocabulary, but you're not practicing your pronunciation.
Yeah, you got to shift your focus a little bit.
Got to find that equilibrium.
Exactly. And remember, the best way to learn is by doing. Don't be afraid to step outside that comfort zone.
Right.
And use your English in real life situations.
Exactly. So ordering food at a restaurant, asking for directions, chatting with a stranger.
Yeah, those interactions, they'll build your skills and your confidence.
So there you have it. 9 secrets, a ton of strategies, and a reminder. Enjoy the journey.
Embrace it.
This guy asks a great question. How will you personalize these secrets and make them your own?
It's up to you.
So reflect on what you learned today and start creating your own path. Remember, language learning's an adventure. Keep practicing, keep exploring, and keep sharing your gift of language.
Until next time, happy language learning.
All right, let's dive in. We're unlocking a vault today filled with 25 uncommon but incredibly useful English words.
And these aren't just any old words, no. We're giving you the good stuff.
Yeah, these words are going to add some serious depth to your conversations. And maybe even a touch of magic, who knows?
Exactly. It's like we're equipping you with a whole new set of tools for expressing yourself.
So first up is astonishing. Everyone uses amazing or surprising.
Yeah, but astonishing, that's something else.
It is. It hits different, right?
Absolutely. It's like you've seen something that changes everything, It shifts your perspective.
Like if you were describing the Northern Lights and you're like, the Northern Lights display was absolutely astonishing. It just takes it up a notch.
Right. It's not just a description, it's an experience.
It really is. Okay, so let's talk about a word that gives you a completely different feeling. Bliss.
Bliss is so much more than just happy. It's like this deep sense of peace and joy.
Yeah, it's like that feeling you get when you're meditating or when you're out in nature. Have you ever felt that when you're out hiking?
Oh, absolutely.
It's like that feeling of pure contentment.
Yeah. And not just a fleeting emotion, it's like a state of being.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I think we've all experienced this next one. Sometimes you don't even have the right word for it, but this word is perfect. Dwindle.
Ah, yes. Like watching a campfire slowly die out, or the last drops of coffee in your mug.
Oh, I can picture it perfectly.
Time, resources, and motivation, they can all dwindle away.
Yeah, it's that gradual decrease. Like it slowly fades away. It makes you really think about how you use your time and resources.
It does.
Okay, so speaking of resources, what about a word for making the most of what you have? Being smart about it. Frugal.
Frugal sometimes gets bad rap like it means being cheap, but it's not about that at all. It's about being mindful, you know?
Yeah, it's about intentionality.
Right.
Like making conscious decisions about your spending. So you're not wasting anything. It's almost like a whole philosophy.
It is. And it's not just about money. It's about everything. Time, energy, resources.
That's a good point. Okay, so let's move on to a word that's all about authenticity. Genuine.
Genuine is so important, especially these days.
I know, right? It's like everyone's trying to be someone they're not.
Exactly.
But genuine is all about being real, being true to yourself and to others too.
Yeah. And when you compliment someone's genuine nature, it means something.
It really does, because you're acknowledging that they're sincere, that they're not putting on an act.
Right. It's a compliment that goes a long way.
Okay, now let's talk about a word that can sometimes be a bit of a roadblock. Hinder.
Hinder, yeah. That's about the obstacles we face in life.
It could be anything, right? Procrastination, fear, even outside forces that are out of our control.
It's acknowledging those things that are holding us back.
Because once you acknowledge them, you can start to overcome them.
Exactly.
Now, have you ever worked on a project or maybe tried to learn a new skill and felt like it was just way too much?
All the time.
Complicated comes to mind. But what about the word intricate?
Ooh, intricate is good. It's like there's a lot going on.
Yeah, it's complex, but it's also beautifully structured, like a fancy watch or something.
Right, there's an order to it.
It's not just chaos, it's organized complexity.
I like that, organized complexity.
Okay, intricate. I'm going to use that one. Now, let's be real. We're all juggling a lot these days. Work, family, life, it's a lot.
It really is.
So the word juggle, it's pretty perfect, don't you think?
It is, because you're trying to keep all those bowls in the air.
Exactly. You're trying not to let anything drop.
And it takes practice, right? And focus.
Yeah, and a good sense of balance.
Definitely.
Okay, so switching gears a little bit, what about a word that describes something that's financially rewarding?
Lucrative.
Lucrative. It has a nice ring to it.
It does.
It makes you think of success, abundance.
Exactly. Like a career that's not just fulfilling, but also goes well.
Or even a side hustle.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, now let's talk about a word that captures that sense of wonder and amazement. Marvel.
Marvel. Like when you see something truly breathtaking.
Oh, I remember the first time I saw the Grand Canyon. It was just incredible. I was in awe. Like, how did this even happen?
Right. It's that feeling of wonder.
Yeah, an appreciation for something bigger than yourself.
It's a powerful feeling.
It is. Okay, so we live in a world where everything is connected, right? Technology is everywhere. So the word ubiquitous is pretty fitting, wouldn't you say?
It is. It's like smartphones, social media. They're everywhere you look.
Yeah, we're surrounded by it, and it makes you think about the impact it's having.
On everything.
On everything. Okay, let's wrap up this first round with a word that's all about embracing the unknown. Venture.
Venture. That's about taking risks, stepping outside your comfort zone.
Exactly. It could be starting a business, traveling to a new country, or just trying something new. It's about that willingness to explore.
And to see where it leads you.
Yeah, and to grow along the way.
Exactly. Even if it's a little bit scary.
It is. Okay, so we've covered some amazing words in this first round, but we've got more to come.
You know, when we were talking about venture, it can be kind of scary, right?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Like you never know what's going to happen.
Right, and sometimes you just don't feel ready, like reluctance.
Exactly. Like you want to stay in your comfort zone. It feels safe there.
I get it. But I also think sometimes reluctance can be a good thing.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Like it gives you time to really appreciate what you already have, you know, before you jump into something new.
That's a good point. It's like that feeling right before you go on vacation.
Yes, that's a perfect example. Okay, so let's talk about a word that has a really cozy, comforting vibe to it. Quaint.
Quaint is just so charming, isn't it?
It is. It makes me think of those little towns you see in movies.
With the cobblestone streets and the cute little shops.
Yes, or like a cozy bookstore with a fireplace.
Yeah, it has that old-fashioned feel, doesn't it?
It does, like a simpler time.
Less hustle and bustle.
Yeah, definitely less stressful. Okay, so now let's move on to a word that's all about subtlety. Subtle.
Subtle is about those things you don't notice right away, but you make a big difference.
Like a faint smell of perfume. Or like the way someone raises an eyebrow.
Exactly. It's those little things that add depth and meaning.
Yeah, it's not about being loud or flashy. It's about the details.
Right, and sometimes those details are the most powerful.
They really are. Okay, so now let's talk about being practical and getting things done. Pragmatic.
Pragmatic people, they're the problem solvers.
Yeah, they're not afraid to roll up their sleeves and figure things out.
And they focus on what works, none of that fancy stuff, just solutions.
Yeah, and they're efficient too. They get right to the point.
Okay, so now let's switch gears again. What about a word for an idea that's just starting to form? Like a seed.
Notion.
Notion. I like that. It's like a glimmer of inspiration.
Exactly. Like you're not quite sure where it's going yet. Right. But it has potential. It could grow into something amazing, or it might just fizzle out. But it's still worth paying attention to.
Oh, absolutely. You never know where those little notions might lead.
Okay, so now let's talk about the opposite of being insightful. Oblivious.
Oh, yeah. We all know someone who's oblivious.
They're just completely unaware of what's going on around them.
It's like they're in their own little world.
They can be kind of funny sometimes, but also a little frustrating.
Definitely. Like, how do you not see what's right in front of you?
Right. You got to pay attention to the cues.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you're going to miss out.
Okay, remember we talked about keen earlier? It's like the opposite of oblivious.
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean.
Keen is all about being alert and engaged, eager to learn.
While oblivious is like totally clueless.
Exactly.
Makes sense. Okay, so what about a word for being really passionate about something? Like super enthusiastic.
Zealous.
Zealous, that's the one. Like you're so into it, you can't contain yourself. It's contagious.
Yeah, and it inspires other people.
It does. Okay, now let's celebrate what makes each of us unique. Quirks.
Quirks are those little things that make you, you.
They're like your signature moves.
Exactly, like that friend who always wears mismatched socks.
Or the coworker who collects those weird little figurines.
Yeah, it's those things that make you interesting.
I love that. Quirks are awesome. Okay, so what about a word that describes who we are at our core?
Identity.
Identity, that's a big one.
It is. It's about your values, your beliefs, your experiences.
Everything that makes you, you. And it's always changing too, right?
Exactly. We're always growing and evolving.
Okay, before we move on, I want to talk about thrive again for a second.
Oh, thrive's a great word.
It is. It's like you're not just surviving, you're flourishing.
You're living your best life.
Yeah, you're reaching your full potential. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of great words, but we've got one more set to go. Okay, we're back, ready for the final round. What words are we looking at this time?
Well, let's start with yearn. It's a powerful word, you know?
It is. It makes me think of like really deep longing for something you can't have.
Yeah, like a lost love or a dream that feels impossible.
Right. It's that ache in your heart. But there's also beauty in it, what do you think?
Oh, absolutely. It shows how deeply we can feel.
Yeah, and it can be a motivator too. Like that yearning pushes you to try harder.
It does. It can push you to venture out and try new things.
Oh, I see the connection. Like yearn is the fuel and venture is the action.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about a word that's really important for success. Tenacity.
Oh, tenacity is huge. It's all about never giving up.
Yeah, it's like you're determined to reach your goal no matter what. You don't let anything stop you.
Right. You just keep pushing through.
It makes me think about our listeners, you know. How do they handle challenges? Are they tenacious?
That's a great question. It's something to think about.
It is. Okay, so tenacity is about never giving up. But what about persistent?
Persistent is a little different. It's more about consistency.
Okay, so like you're steadily working towards something, even if it takes a long time.
Yeah, it's like that saying, slow and steady wins the race.
Exactly. You just keep at it and eventually you break through. Okay, so now let's talk about a word that describes something truly significant. Monumental.
Monumental, like a historical event that changes everything.
Yeah, or like a scientific discovery, or even a personal achievement that transforms your life.
Exactly. It's a turning point.
It makes you think about what really matters, you know, what leaves a mark on the world.
It does. And sometimes those monumental events are met with a lot of excitement. Remember zeal?
Yeah, like monumental describes the event and zeal describes the feeling.
Right. Okay, and speaking of feelings, let's revisit thrive. It's such an important word, especially when we're talking about personal growth.
It is. It's like you're not just existing, you're thriving.
You're living a full, meaningful life.
Yeah, you're constantly growing and evolving. Okay, so for our final word, we're going to talk about what makes you, you, identity.
Identity is a complex thing, isn't it? It's all the pieces that make you who you are.
Yeah, your beliefs, your experiences, your values, everything. And it's not fixed either, right?
No, it's always changing. We're always learning and growing.
I love that. It's like we're all works in progress. Well, I think we've covered some incredible words today. I feel like I've learned so much.
Me too, and I hope our listeners have as well.
I hope they've been inspired to use these words in their own lives and to keep exploring language. There's always more to discover.
That's right. Words are powerful tools. Use them wisely.
So true. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us on this word journey.
Ever get that feeling you might be using a word wrong, but you're too afraid to ask?
Oh, yeah.
Well, fear no more. Because today we're diving deep into 15 words that even fluent English speakers mess up. We've got a YouTube script here all about leveling up your vocabulary. And you might be surprised by some of these common mistakes.
It is fascinating, though, how some of these errors stem from subtle distinctions that are easy to miss in casual conversation.
Okay, let's unpack this. We'll start with some beginner traps. Words that seem straightforward, but can be surprisingly tricky. I'll be honest, the word literally is one I hear misused all the time.
Yep.
Just the other day, someone told me they were literally dying from how much they had to do that week.
Yes. Literally seems to be a word that's been taken hostage by hyperbole.
So remind us, what should literally mean? Why is it important to use it correctly?
Literally means something actually happened, exactly as stated.
Yeah.
It emphasizes the reality of a situation, not an exaggeration.
Right.
While your friend might have felt overwhelmed, they weren't literally dying.
Right.
You see, using literally correctly makes sure your words carry their intended weight. It's about precision and clarity, especially in an age where misinformation can spread so easily.
That's a really good point. The impact on communication is huge. Okay, another beginner word that trips people up is unique. I once saw a store advertising a sale on very unique items. Something about that just felt off.
That's because unique means one of a kind.
Right.
Inherently special. It stands alone.
Right.
So adding modifiers like very or quite is redundant and actually weakens the impact of the word.
So instead of saying something is very unique, how can we highlight that specialness in everyday conversation?
Let the word unique speak for itself.
Okay.
You could say that painting is truly unique or her style is unique. You're emphasizing the inherent specialness without needing to qualify it further.
That's so interesting. I can see how that subtle shift makes a big difference. Even these beginner words have hidden depths. You really have to think about their true meaning.
Absolutely, and that's what makes language so fascinating. Now, prepare to have some assumptions challenged because some words have meanings completely different from what most people assume.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Give me an example of one of these words.
Let's start with irony.
Okay.
Many people confuse irony with simple coincidence or bad luck. For example, someone might say, "It's so ironic that I won the lottery and then got hit by a car."
So winning the lottery and then getting hit by a car, that's just bad luck, not irony.
Yeah.
What makes a situation truly ironic?
True irony involves a situation where the outcome is the opposite of what was expected, often with a humorous or sarcastic undertone. A classic example would be a fire station burning down. It's not just about unfortunate timing, it's about a surprising reversal of expectations.
Wow, that makes so much sense. It's not just about something bad happening. It's about the unexpected nature of the situation.
You see, understanding irony helps us analyze situations more deeply. It's not just about bad luck. It's about recognizing the unexpected and sometimes absurd nature of life.
Speaking of unexpected twists,
Yeah.
let's talk about a word. Often misused in situations with high stakes. Alibis. I feel like I hear people using alibi as a synonym for any kind of excuse.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I have a good alibi.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a common mistake. People might say, "I didn't finish the project, but I have a good alibi."
Wait, so if it's not just any excuse, what makes a real alibi? I'm genuinely confused.
An alibi has a very specific legal meaning.
Okay.
It refers to proof that someone was somewhere else at the time a crime was committed, demonstrating their innocence. It's not just any excuse. It's evidence that clears someone of suspicion.
So using alibi to explain why you didn't finish a project wouldn't really make sense.
Exactly. Using alibi in casual conversation when you simply mean excuse can actually undermine your credibility. It shows a lack of precision in your language.
Okay, this is making me rethink how I use these words. What other intermediate words are lurking out there, ready to trip us up?
How about a word that's often confused with its near opposite? Disinterested. Many people use disinterested to mean uninterested or bored. For instance, someone might say, "I was completely disinterested in that meeting."
Disinterested. If it doesn't mean bored or uninterested, then what does it actually mean?
Disinterested actually describes someone who is impartial or unbiased, free from personal stake or interest in a situation. A good example would be a judge who must remain disinterested in the outcome of a case.
Okay.
They can't be swayed by personal opinions or biases.
So if I wanted to say that I found the meeting boring, disinterested wouldn't be the right word to use.
Precisely. In that case, uninterested or bored would be more accurate.
Right.
Disinterested implies neutrality and objectivity. It's about being impartial, not uncaring.
I never realized how a single word could completely change the tone and meaning of a sentence. It's all about understanding those subtle but powerful nuances.
Absolutely. And that's what we're here to explore. Are you ready to be bemused by the next word?
Bemused. Okay, you've definitely got my attention. What's so tricky about this one?
People often think bemused means amused or entertained.
Okay.
You might hear someone say, I was bemused by his silly jokes.
So if bemused doesn't mean amused, then what's the real meaning?
Bemused actually means puzzled, bewildered, or even slightly confused. Think of it as a state of mild perplexity, for example. You might be bemused by a riddle you can't solve.
Huh?
Or a strange event you don't fully understand.
So it's not about laughing at a joke. It's about that feeling of, wait, what just happened? That makes a lot of sense.
Imagine someone watching a magic trick.
Right.
Their brow furrowed, a slight smile playing on their lips.
Yeah.
That's bemusement. It's not amusement, but a fascinated perplexity.
Okay, now I'm really starting to understand the difference.
Uh-huh.
Bemused is a much richer word than I realized.
Mm-hmm.
It's about that space between amusement and confusion.
Exactly. And these subtle distinctions can make a big difference in how your message is received. Are you ready for our final intermediate word?
Bring it on. I'm ready to tackle anything.
All right. Let's explore a word that's often misused to describe something grand or impressive. Enormity. People often use enormity to emphasize the sheer size or scope of something.
Uh-huh.
You might hear someone say, I was overwhelmed by the enormity of the project.
That's how I usually use it.
Mhm.
But I have a feeling it doesn't quite mean what I think it means.
Yeah.
What's the real meaning?
While enormity can relate to size, its primary meaning leans towards something more serious and weighty.
Okay.
It often refers to extreme wickedness, outrageousness, or the sheer gravity of a situation,
Right.
particularly in a moral or ethical context.
So it's less about physical size and more about the weight of the implications.
Precisely. For instance, if you were discussing a horrific crime, you might speak of the enormity of the act to emphasize its moral depravity and the severity of its consequences.
Wow, that puts the word in a whole new light. It's not just about something being big, it's about something being profoundly impactful, often in a negative sense.
Exactly. It's a word that carries a lot of weight, both literally and figuratively.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground already. And I'm starting to feel the enormity and the true sense of the word, of all these linguistic nuances. What's next on our journey?
Next, we'll be venturing into the realm of advanced words, where the nuances become even more intricate. Are you ready to level up your vocabulary even further?
Absolutely. I'm eager to see what other linguistic gems await us in this deep dive into words.
Right.
It'd be great.
Awesome. Fasten your seatbelts, because these advanced words can be real brain twisters. They're the ones that often pop up in intellectual discussions or professional settings, and misusing them can unfortunately make you sound less credible.
Okay, I'm ready to face the advanced word challenge head on. Let's start with one that I've definitely struggled with in the past.
Decimate.
Decimate is fascinating because its common usage has drifted quite far from its original meaning. People often use it as a synonym for completely destroy, like saying the hurricane decimated the coastal towns. Yeah, I've definitely heard it used that way. But if it doesn't mean to completely destroy, then what does it actually mean?
Decimate has a very specific historical root. It comes from the ancient Roman practice of punishing mutinous troops by killing 1 out of every 10 soldiers. So the original meaning of decimate is to reduce by 1/10, not to obliterate completely.
Wow, I had no idea. That's a pretty grim origin story for a word. So using decimate to describe the total destruction of a town wouldn't be quite right.
Exactly. It's a case of hyperbole overtaking precision. While the impact of a hurricane can be devastating, it's unlikely to literally reduce a town's population by exactly 1/10.
This is why I love these deep dives. You uncover these hidden layers of meaning that we often miss in everyday conversation. It's like learning a secret code.
This word's bloody history reminds us that language carries the weight of the past. Even today, decimate suggests a severe calculated reduction, not total destruction.
Okay, what other advanced words are waiting to be decoded?
Let's tackle one that often gets misused in academic circles: peruse.
Peruse. I'll admit I've been guilty of using this one incorrectly myself. I always thought it meant to quickly skim through something.
That's a very common misconception. In reality, peruse means to read thoroughly and carefully. It implies a close and attentive examination of a text, not a hasty glance.
So if I said I perused the report before the meeting, it would mean I'd given it a very close read, not just skim the headings.
Precisely. Using peruse correctly conveys a sense of diligence and attention to detail. It suggests you've really absorbed the information.
This is another one of those aha moments. I'm realizing that using these advanced words correctly can signal a certain level of intellectual rigor. It shows you're not just skimming the surface.
Exactly. It's about choosing words that accurately reflect the depth of your engagement with the topic.
All right, bring on the next advanced word challenge. I'm feeling more and more confident with each one we tackle.
Let's see if you can crack the code on this one. Nonplussed.
Nonplussed. This one seems tricky. I've heard it used to describe someone who's calm and collected under pressure. Like, even though the presentation went wrong, she remained nonplussed.
That's a clever guess. But it's actually the opposite. Nonplussed describes a state of being surprised and confused, often to the point of speechlessness. It's that feeling of being caught off guard and unsure how to react.
Wow, so it's almost like being speechless with shock.
Exactly. Nonplussed implies a momentary loss of composure, a sense of being bewildered. It's that deer in the headlights feeling.
That makes so much more sense. I can see how misusing this word could lead to some awkward situations.
Indeed, it highlights the importance of understanding the nuances of these advanced words. They can have a big impact on how our message is perceived.
Okay, what other advanced word adventures await us? I'm ready to expand my vocabulary horizons.
Let's explore a word that often gets used in a way that diminishes its true impact. Plethora.
Plethora.
I usually think of this word as meaning a lot of something, in a positive way, like there was a plethora of fun activities to choose from at the festival. That's a common interpretation. But plethora carries a slightly different nuance. While it does mean an abundance of something, it often implies an excessive or overwhelming amount.
Okay.
It can sometimes even suggest a sense of burden or inconvenience.
Interesting. So it's not just about having a lot of something, it's about having maybe too much of it, like it's overflowing.
Precisely. Imagine a situation where you're bombarded with information or faced with an overwhelming number of choices. That sense of being inundated can be captured by the word plethora.
So if I were to say, I have a plethora of emails to respond to, it would imply that I'm feeling a bit swamped by them, not necessarily excited about having a full inbox.
Exactly. It's about that tipping point where abundance starts to feel like excess. It's about that too much of a good thing feeling.
I'm starting to see how using plethora correctly can add a layer of sophistication to my descriptions. It's a much more nuanced way of expressing abundance than just saying a lot.
It's about choosing words that convey not just the quantity, but also the impact of that quantity.
This is making me realize how much I've taken these words for granted, what other advanced words are hiding in plain sight, waiting to be understood.
Let's delve into one that's often misused in discussions about facts and information. Factoid. Factoid. This one seems pretty straightforward. I always thought it just meant a small or trivial fact.
That's how it's commonly used, but its original meaning is a bit more nuanced, even controversial. The term factoid was actually coined to describe something that appears to be a fact, but is actually false or unsubstantiated.
Right, really? That's a completely different meaning.
That's the risk with using factoid in its original sense. It implies a degree of skepticism or even doubt about the validity of the information being presented. It can be a way of highlighting that something may sound like a fact, but it hasn't actually been proven true.
This is a perfect example of how language can evolve and shift in meaning over time. It's important to be aware of both the common usage and the original intent behind a word. You're absolutely right. Language is a living, breathing thing that constantly adapts and changes. Our goal is to be aware of those changes and use words in a way that is both accurate and effective.
So how can we use factoid in a way that doesn't accidentally spread misinformation?
If you're unsure of the accuracy of a piece of information, it's best to avoid using factoid altogether. You could say something like, here's an interesting tidbit, or this might be a bit of trivia, but this avoids any implication that the information might be false.
That's really helpful advice. Okay, bring on the next advanced word. I'm ready to conquer some more linguistic complexities.
Let's tackle a word that often causes confusion in discussions and debates. Moot.
Moot? I've always thought of this word as meaning irrelevant or pointless. Like that argument is moot because the decision has already been made.
That's a common understanding, but it's not entirely accurate. While moot can relate to something that's no longer relevant, its original meaning is a bit more nuanced. It originally referred to a matter that is open for debate or discussion.
So if a topic is moot, it's not necessarily pointless. It just means there's room for further discussion or consideration.
Precisely. Imagine a legal case where the circumstances change, making the original point of contention no longer relevant to the outcome. The issue might be considered moot, not because it was unimportant, but because it's no longer central to the case.
That's a really helpful clarification. So it's less about the topic being irrelevant and more about its significance having shifted or diminished.
Exactly. It's about acknowledging that the context has changed, and the original point of debate may no longer be the primary focus.
I'm definitely feeling more enlightened than moot after tackling that one. What other advanced word adventures await us?
Let's wrap up our exploration of advanced words with a pair that often trips people up: infer and imply.
Infer and imply. The classic conundrum. I know these words are related to drawing conclusions, but I often mix them up.
It's a common confusion. The key difference lies in who is doing the action. The speaker or writer implies something, meaning they suggest or hint at something without stating it directly. The listener or reader infers something, meaning they draw a conclusion based on what is implied.
So if I were to say, it's getting late, I might be implying that it's time to go, even though I haven't explicitly said so.
Exactly. And if you, as the listener, understood my implication, you would have correctly inferred my meaning.
I see. So it's a two-way street. The speaker sends out a subtle signal, and the listener picks up on that signal and draws a conclusion.
Precisely. It's like a subtle dance of communication where meaning is conveyed through suggestion and interpretation.
This distinction is so subtle, but it's crucial for clear communication. Misusing these words can lead to all sorts of misunderstandings.
Absolutely. Mastering the difference between infer and imply is essential for navigating conversations and interpreting written texts accurately. It's about understanding both sides of the communication equation.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. It's amazing how much depth and complexity there is to these seemingly simple words.
And we've only just scratched the surface. But I hope you're starting to see how understanding the nuances of language can empower you to communicate with greater clarity and precision.
I'm definitely feeling a lot more confident about using these words correctly. It's like a whole new world of linguistic possibilities has opened up.
And that's the beauty of language learning. It's an ongoing journey of discovery and refinement. Are you ready for a quick challenge to test your newfound knowledge?
Absolutely. Bring it on. All right. Hit me with that word challenge. I'm ready to put my knowledge to the test.
Okay. Let's see if you can recall the true meaning of nonplussed. Without looking back at our discussion, take a moment to think about it.
Okay. No peeking. I think I've got it. Nonplussed means to be surprised and confused, almost to the point of speechlessness. It's like that feeling of being completely thrown off guard and not knowing how to react.
That's absolutely correct. You've successfully decoded nonplussed. It seems our deep dive has truly expanded your vocabulary horizons.
I'm feeling pretty proud of myself right now. This whole experience has been eye-opening. I've realized that using words correctly isn't just about sounding smart. It's about communicating effectively and ensuring that my message is understood.
It's about wielding the power of language with precision and care. Choosing words that accurately reflect not only what we want to say, but also the subtle nuances of meaning we wish to convey.
You know, it's funny because I used to think that vocabulary was just about memorizing definitions. But this deep dive has shown me that it's so much more than that. It's about understanding the history, the etymology, the subtle shades of meaning that make each word unique.
It's about recognizing that words are not static, but dynamic. They evolve over time, their meanings shifting and adapting to reflect the changing world around us.
And that's what makes language so fascinating. It's a living, breathing entity that connects us to the past, informs our present, and shapes our future.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I encourage you to continue exploring the fascinating world of language. Pay attention to the words you use, the words you encounter, and the way they impact your understanding of the world.
I know I will. This has been such a rewarding journey. I'm walking away with a newfound appreciation for the power of words and the importance of using them correctly.
Remember, language is a gift, a tool that allows us to connect, create, and inspire. Let's use it wisely.
Absolutely.
Until next time.
Happy wordsmithing. Okay, so let's be real for a sec. Small talk, right? It can be like the most awkward thing ever. Like when you're stuck in a situation and you know you should be chatting, but your mind just goes blank. Anyone else feel me on that? But get this. What if I told you that this deep dive could actually turn that dread into pure confidence? And we're going to do it using a source you'd never expect. A video script, get this, for people learning English.
I know, right? Sounds a little out there. But seriously, this script is full of stuff that goes way deeper than just language. It's like a secret masterclass in how humans connect, hidden inside an English lesson.
Okay, I got to admit, when you first mentioned this source, I was kind of like, how can something for total beginners help someone who's already fluent?
That's fair, totally. But the cool thing here is, by breaking small talk down into these simple steps, it actually shows you the psychology behind how we connect. Like, it's a cheat sheet for building rapport, even if you never needed help with English in the first place.
So it's more about understanding the, deeper game, not just memorizing lines.
Exactly. For example, the script makes a big deal about greetings and weather talk, stuff we might think is just filler.
Yeah, I always thought that stuff was kind of pointless.
Right. But they actually serve a super important purpose. Like, humans are literally wired to bond over shared experiences.
Okay.
Even something as simple as complaining about the heat or, whatever the weather's doing.
Okay, yeah, I guess I can see that.
It creates that instant common ground, that we're in this together feeling, which is huge for starting any kind of connection.
Wow, that's actually so true. I never thought about it that way.
And the script goes even further. Instead of those boring old greetings like, "Hi, how are you?" it gives you phrases that fit the specific situation so you get a better response.
Oh, I like where this is going. Give me an example.
So say you're at a party. Instead of that robotic, "Hi, how are you?" try something like, "What brings you here?"
Way more interesting, right?
Way more. It's like you're actually interested, not just saying words. Exactly. It shows you're paying attention and they actually get to share something about themselves. It's what they call a strong bid in, like conversation analysis stuff. Each thing we say is a bid to connect.
Ooh, I'm digging this bidding concept. So we're all just out here trying to make the strongest bid to connect.
Totally. And this script is giving us all the winning moves. Another one they have is, instead of just saying nice weather, you could say something like, "This weather's crazy, right?"
It's like inviting the other person in on the joke. I like it.
Yeah.
So it's making small talk feel, I don't know, less robotic. But what really stood out to me was the role-playing part.
Ah, yes. That's where the magic really happens. The people who made this script, they get it. Knowing the right words isn't enough. You got to actually practice using them. And role-playing is the best way to do that.
But what if you don't have someone to practice with? Isn't that kind of, I don't know, weird to do alone?
For sure. But you can totally do it in your head. It's called mental rehearsal. Basically, you just picture yourself in different situations.
Hold on. So you're saying by just imagining myself rocking these small talk moments, I'm actually getting better at it in real life?
You got it. Might sound a little strange, but neuroscientists have found that when you rehearse something mentally, your brain fires up the same way it does when you're actually doing the thing.
No way. That's so cool. It's like training your brain for social situations, like a cheat code for confidence. I'm already feeling less terrified about networking events or, just parties in general.
It's crazy, right? How powerful our brains are. Like, this script really shows you how to use that power to, level up your social skills.
I like that, level up. So we've talked about greetings, weather talk, even practicing in your head. What else does this script have up its sleeve?
Okay, so one thing that really impressed me was the questions. They go way beyond those typical boring questions like, "Where are you from?" or "What do you do?" The usual suspects.
Yeah, those can be so snooze fest sometimes.
Right. Instead, they give you all these questions that are actually interesting, designed to, spark real conversations.
Okay, I'm all about those real conversations. Tell me more. Give me the good stuff.
So instead of asking, "What do you do?" which can feel kind of like a job interview, they suggest asking, "What do you like to do for fun?"
I mean, that's a classic for a reason, right? It gets people talking about what they're actually passionate about.
Exactly. It's like you're inviting them to show you their real selves, not just their LinkedIn profile. And if you really want to go deeper, you could try something like, "What's the most interesting thing you've done lately?"
Ooh, I like that one. It's like a sneak peek into their adventures. You might even discover you have some cool stuff in common.
Totally. Plus, it shows you're actually curious about them, not just trying to fill the silence. And they even have specific questions for different situations. Like, If you're at a dinner party, you could ask, have you tried any good restaurants lately?
Perfect. Everyone loves talking about food. Instant conversation starter, right there.
It's true. It's something we can all relate to, like enjoying a good meal. Okay, so we've covered greetings, weather talk, asking interesting questions, even mental rehearsal. But what about when you're ready to, make your escape? Does the script help with that too?
Yeah, like how do you end a conversation without being rude?
Don't worry, they got you covered. They have a bunch of different closing phrases depending on the situation. From a simple, it was nice talking to you, to something more like, hey, we should grab coffee sometime.
Oh, I love that they include those follow-up suggestions.
Yeah.
Sometimes you really do click with someone, and it's good to have a way to, keep things going.
Exactly. It shows you're confident and interested, which is always a good look. And even if they can't meet up, it still leaves a good impression. They'll remember you as someone who actually wanted to connect.
Yeah, it's like planting a seed, right? You never know where those initial conversations might lead. What about those times when you just need a quick, casual exit, though, like you're running late or something?
No problem. They have those too. They suggest things like, catch you later or have a great day. Those are perfect for keeping it light and friendly without feeling like you have to, hang around forever.
Okay, so whether you're aiming for a lifelong friendship or just a quick chat, it sounds like this script has given us a whole toolbox for navigating the social world.
Yeah. It's like they took all the guesswork out of small talk and gave us a clear path to follow. It's pretty amazing.
And what's so cool is that this script, even though it's for people learning English, it actually shows us some really deep things about human connections, like a reminder that we all want to feel understood, even in those little everyday conversations.
So true. And I think that's what makes this deep dive so valuable. We're not just learning phrases, we're learning about what makes us human and how even a short conversation can make a difference, create a ripple effect.
It's like we're seeing the world through a whole new lens now, right?
Yeah.
And that brings us to the best part, putting it all into practice. We've talked about a lot today, the different phases of small talk, how to make a bid for connection, even practicing in your head. But now it's your turn, dear listener. Take these ideas and make them your own.
Yes. This is where the real transformation happens. We've given you the tools. Now it's up to you to use them. And remember, you don't have to be perfect. The goal isn't to become some kind of small talk robot.
Exactly. Be yourself, be genuine, and use these techniques to connect with people in a real way. So let's recap the top 3 things we've learned from this unexpected deep dive into, mastering small talk. First, small talk isn't just random. There's a structure you can follow to make those conversations flow.
Second, the words you use actually matter. This script has given us tons of phrases that are interesting, thoughtful, and perfect for different situations.
And third, practice, practice, practice. Whether you're practicing in your head or even role-playing with a friend, the more you do it, the more confident and natural you'll become.
It really is freeing, right?
Yeah.
Knowing you have these tools, it takes away that fear of messing up or saying the wrong thing.
For sure. It's like having this, secret weapon for social situations. And honestly, the biggest thing I'm taking away from this is small talk doesn't have to be something you dread. It can actually be fun, a way to connect with people,
100%. What about you? What's sticking with you from all this? What did you find most helpful from looking at this script?
It's funny. I think what resonated most was realizing that everyone, even people who seem super outgoing, they've probably felt that awkwardness too. This script shows that small talk is a skill, something you can learn and get better at, just like anything else.
Right. It's not like some people are born knowing how to do it and others aren't.
Exactly. It takes so much pressure off. You can just approach those conversations with curiosity, like a little game. Just see what happens.
I love that. A little game. It really can be like an adventure.
Yeah.
Discovering something new about someone, even if it's just a tiny thing.
And it reminds you that even those small moments, a quick chat, a smile, they can all make a difference. It's like we're all connected in this big web, and every conversation adds to that,
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive into, the surprisingly interesting world of small talk, I want to leave you with this. Think about the next time you are in a situation where there's going to be some small talk. Maybe it's a party or a work event, even just grabbing coffee. What are you most excited to try out from all the stuff we talked about?
Such a good question.
Yeah.
And hey, remember, it doesn't have to be perfect, okay? Just be yourself, be genuine, and see what happens. You might be surprised how fun and even meaningful those small conversations can be. So go out there and conquer the world of small talk. We believe in you.
Welcome to this deep dive, everyone. Today we're going to be exploring, well, actually, your English learning journey using a script for a video for English language learners. It's going to be like a deep dive within a deep dive, really. So no matter where you're at, beginner, advanced, somewhere in between, there should be something here for you.
Yeah, I think it's so cool how this script uses like real stories from other people learning English,
Yeah.
to like inspire. It's like we're all on this journey together.
Totally. And speaking of journeys, the script starts off by asking this big question, right? What made you want to learn English in the first place? The why behind your adventure, basically. They give this example of a learner, Anna, and her goal was she just wanted to watch TV, without subtitles. And what I thought was so cool about that was it was totally, coming from her, she just wanted to do it, not because someone told her she had to or anything.
Right.
Those are the best reasons,
Right.
when it comes from inside.
Yeah, for sure. Knowing your why can really make a difference, I think, especially when things get tough, When you hit a wall, you just don't feel like studying. It's like having a compass to keep you, heading in the right direction.
I love that, the compass. So I'm curious, what was your why, when you started out? Take a second to think about that. It's worth, revisiting it as you keep going, too. Now, the script also digs into how, where you are can affect your learning. It gets that not everyone can be, surrounded by English speakers all the time, but it kind of challenges us to get creative.
Yeah, yeah. This story about Raj really stuck with me. He lives in this village where literally no one speaks English. And so he basically turned his whole house into this learning tool, sticky notes everywhere, using English for everyday stuff. It just proves you don't have to be in some English speaking country to learn it well.
It's amazing, right? Talk about resourcefulness. He didn't wait for the perfect situation. He just made it himself. And this actually leads perfectly into what the script talks about next. How to, take all that time we waste and turn it into learning time.
Oh, yeah. Like when you're scrolling on your phone or whatever, and it's not even fun anymore.
Exactly. But imagine if you could use that time to learn instead. The script mentions Maria, and she would spend 30 minutes every night on, I think it was TikTok, and she swapped that for English learning videos, and guess what? In just a couple of weeks, her vocabulary, exploded.
Wow.
See? Totally doable. And what's even cooler is you can do this throughout your day, right? When you're commuting, waiting in line, even just doing chores. You can listen to podcasts, use apps, just sneak in little bits of English here and there.
Yeah, yeah. Just make it a part of your life,
Yeah.
The more you can do that, the more natural it all feels.
Exactly. The script then kind of switches gears and talks about common mistakes that can, slow you down. And this is where I think your expertise is going to be so helpful. One of the first things it mentions is getting too hung up on grammar, to the point where you're not even really speaking. It's easy to just memorize all the rules, but language is really about talking to people, right?
Absolutely. Grammar's important. Don't
Yeah.
get me wrong. But sometimes I think it gets too much focus, it's more important to be able to speak fluently and confidently, even if you mess up a little. It's about finding that balance, I think. What do you think?
Oh, 100%. I totally agree with that. You could know all the grammar in the world, but if you can't have a conversation, what's the point, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's like you learn how to play an instrument, but then you never actually play any music.
Exactly. You just practice scales all day long. Okay, so the script's next point, I think this is something we've all dealt with, being scared to make mistakes. I mean, every language learner goes through that, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. But I think it's so important to change how we think about mistakes. They're not failures. They're actually feedback.
Yeah.
Each mistake is a chance to learn and get better.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. It takes the pressure off, And this kind of leads into the third mistake they talk about in the script, which is not practicing regularly. We've all been there, right? Crazy study sessions and then nothing for weeks.
Yeah, I've totally been there. It's always better to do a little bit every day than a lot all at once.
Yeah.
It's like you wouldn't go to the gym once a month for 8 hours and expect to see results. You got to be consistent.
So true. Short, consistent workouts, that's the key. The script mentions this learner who went from these huge study sessions every now and then to just doing 30 minutes a day every day. And they saw way more progress.
It's amazing, right? How much difference just a little bit each day can make.
Yeah.
Our brains, they actually learn better that way too, through repetition and slow exposure, not cramming.
So instead of trying to do it all at once, just find little ways to fit English into your day, right?
Exactly.
Okay, let's switch gears a little bit and look at what the script says about, learning English if you don't live in an English-speaking country.
Yeah.
Which can feel like a huge obstacle, but the script has some pretty encouraging examples.
Yeah, I was really interested in that part.
It comes back to what we were saying before about creating that immersive environment, even without actually being around English speakers. And technology can really help with this, right?
Totally.
Like apps for language exchange, online forums, even streaming services with subtitles.
There's so much out there.
Right. Like in the script, they talk about Marco from Spain, and he basically made like his own little English world at home, reading news in English, watching English YouTubers, even talking to friends online from other countries.
Wow, that's awesome.
It's like bringing the English-speaking world to you.
You don't even have to get on a plane.
Exactly. Which leads perfectly into the scripts like Final Challenge, focus on output.
Yeah.
It's not enough to just understand English. You got to use it, by speaking or writing.
Yeah, that's where the real learning happens, I think. Getting out there and actually using the language. I know it can be scary at first, but the more you do it, the easier it gets.
The script suggests a few things you can try, like recording yourself speaking and then listening back to see what you can improve.
Well, that's a good one.
Or joining a speaking group, or even just writing like a short paragraph in English every day.
I like that.
Just little things to get you practicing,
The key is to find what works for you and then make it a habit. It doesn't have to be a big thing. Even 5 minutes a day can make a difference in the long run.
And as we start wrapping up this deep dive here, I think one of the most important things to remember is learning English, it's a journey, right? And every little thing you do, it brings you closer to your goals.
That's a great way to put it.
It's not about being perfect. It's about making progress. I mean, we've talked about so much, right? Like from that whole why thing to making your own little English world. But what really sticks out to me is how much the script is all about, like, doing stuff.
Oh, yeah, totally. You can't just sit there and hope you'll learn English.
Right. You got to get out there and use it. And remember how we talked about making mistakes? The script wants us to think about those differently, too.
Yeah. They're not like the end of the world.
They're actually how you get better.
Like little stepping stones.
I love that. So as we wrap up this whole deep dive into learning English, I have one question for you. And it kind of goes back to that output thing we were talking about. What's one small step you're going to take this week to actually use your English?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Could be anything, really. Record yourself talking for a minute, write an email in English, even just chat with someone online.
It doesn't have to be this big, huge thing.
Exactly. Just something small but consistent.
Like we were saying before, 5 minutes a day, it all adds up.
We've explored a ton of tips today and heard some pretty inspiring stories. I bet there are a few that really resonated with you.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So think about those and how you can use them in your own learning. And remember, learning English, it should be fun, not a chore.
Totally. It's an adventure.
Embrace those challenges, celebrate how far you've come and never stop exploring. Happy learning, everyone. Okay, so ready to dive into something kind of interesting?
Always.
All right, so this masterclass script we found claims it can get you to advanced English fluency.
Oh, wow.
In just 1 hour.
Okay.
Pretty bold claim, right?
Yeah, an hour to fluency.
Yeah, so we're going to break it down, see if it lives up to the hype.
That's good.
Maybe you're someone who's prepping for a presentation or just brushing up on your English skills. Or maybe you're just curious about language learning hacks. Whatever your reason, we're going to dig into this script, see what it offers.
Unearth those nuggets.
Exactly. Unearth the nuggets, see what it really has to offer.
Yeah.
And what I thought was interesting is right away, it kind of skips the usual grammar drills and vocab lists.
Right.
It jumps right into the practical stuff, how to sound more confident, how to adapt to different situations, really just connect with your language.
I like that. That's a good approach.
Yeah, I thought so too.
It's very practical.
Yeah, and one of the first things it encourages you to do is use contractions naturally.
Oh, okay.
Like saying, I've done it differently instead of, I would have done it differently.
Yeah.
Simple, but it makes your speech flow better, I think.
Absolutely, yeah, it does.
And that leads right into this idea of connected speech.
Right.
The script points out how native speakers often link words together.
Right.
So, for example, what do you want to do becomes what I want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
It might feel a little awkward at first,
Yeah.
but it's a key to sounding more natural.
Yeah, I agree.
So I can see how that would take some getting used to, especially if you've been trained to pronounce each word carefully.
Absolutely.
But I can also see how it would make you sound more like a native speaker.
For sure.
Now, The script also doesn't shy away from some challenging vocabulary either.
Oh, okay.
So there are words like ephemeral, resilient, ambivalent, even ostentatious and serendipitous.
Wow.
Do you think they chose those words for a specific reason or just trying to impress people?
Well, I think it's a mix of both
Okay.
because, expanding your vocabulary is important,
Right.
but they are carefully chosen to be kind of memorable
Yeah.
and impactful. Like they use ephemeral to describe a sunset.
Oh, right.
It kind of helps you grab the meaning of the word,
Yeah.
but then also appreciate the nuances of it.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
It's not just about sounding smart. It's about using the right words to express yourself clearly.
exactly.
And speaking of colorful language, they've also included some idioms in this.
Okay.
Things like burning the midnight oil, bite the bullet on the same wavelength.
Right.
Are those common idioms that someone might encounter in everyday conversation?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Idioms can be tricky because their meaning isn't always clear,
Right.
but they add so much personality
Yeah.
and cultural flavor to your English.
Like on the same wavelength is a good way to describe clicking with someone.
Right, when you're just like, we get each other.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that one too. You could easily use that in conversation, whether you're networking or just hanging out with friends.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to something the script emphasizes quite a bit, pronunciation.
Right.
It's not just about saying the words correctly.
Right.
It's about intonation,
Yes.
stress, and rhythm.
That's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
They even point out how just changing the stress on a word can change the meaning entirely.
Yeah, like photograph versus photography.
Exactly.
Yeah, simple shift, but a world of difference.
A big difference.
It's amazing how much nuance there is to pronunciation.
For sure.
And the script actually encourages you to play around with it.
Oh.
They suggest you practice different sentences with rising and falling tones
Oh, interesting.
to see how it changes the meaning
Yeah.
of what you're saying.
I like that. So pronunciation is definitely a key element of sounding more fluent.
It is, for sure.
But the script doesn't just give you these tips and leave you to figure it out on your own.
Right.
They actually try to tie it all together in a real-world scenario,
Okay.
a networking event.
Interesting. Okay.
And it's not just a generic script about exchanging business cards or whatever.
Right.
They've woven in those elements of fluency that we've been talking about. So they suggest starting with a confident introduction, but then using a more engaging question to spark a real conversation.
Ooh, I like that.
Something like, what inspired you to get into your field?
That's a good question.
Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, it's open-ended, shows genuine interest,
Right.
and it avoids those typical small talk cliches.
Exactly.
So-
I like that question too. And they encourage you to build on that initial connection. Instead of just nodding and saying, that's interesting,
Right.
they suggest transitioning smoothly with a comment or a question that shows you're actively listening.
Yeah.
Something like, that's fascinating. Have you considered expanding into other markets?
Oh, nice.
What do you think?
Yeah, I like that. It shows you're engaged, you're thoughtful. Yeah.
So this networking scenario is where they try to bring all the pieces together.
Okay.
It's where you can put those fluency techniques into practice.
Right.
But the big question remains,
What's it?
can you really achieve all of this in just 1 hour?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm a little skeptical about achieving complete fluency in such a short time,
Okay.
but the script does a good job of highlighting the most important areas to focus on. I think it gives you a taste of what's possible, and that's a valuable starting point.
So maybe it's more about giving you a framework,
Yeah.
a set of tools and techniques that can help you continue to develop your fluency. It's like a jumpstart,
Right.
not a complete overhaul.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think it succeeds in that.
Okay.
The script is packed with practical tips and exercises.
Yeah.
And even if it takes you more than an hour to master everything,
Right.
you can start implementing some of these strategies right away.
So it's not about instant fluency,
Right.
but about gaining valuable insights and building a solid foundation.
Exactly.
And speaking of building a foundation, I'm curious what the script says about practice and immersion.
Yeah.
After all, even the best techniques won't get you very far without consistent effort.
You're absolutely right.
Right.
Fluency is a journey, not a destination. You've got to immerse yourself in the language as much as possible.
Right.
Speak fearlessly.
Okay.
Constantly reflect and refine your skills.
So it's not just about completing the masterclass. It's about integrating these techniques into your daily life.
Exactly.
Making English a part of your routine.
That's the key.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive.
We have
But there's much more to unpack.
lots more.
So stay tuned for part 2, where we'll explore even more tips and strategies for achieving advanced English fluency.
Looking forward to it. Welcome back. So last time, we were talking about how this script emphasizes practical skills over rote memorization.
Right.
We touched on connected speech, vocabulary building, even using idioms effectively.
Yeah.
But we left off on a bit of a cliffhanger.
Oh, yeah, pronunciation.
Yeah, that whole pronunciation piece.
The script suddenly turned into a vocal coach.
Right.
Yeah, urging you to pay attention to things like intonation, stress, and rhythm.
Exactly.
So I'm ready to dive deeper into those pronunciation secrets. Where do we start?
Well, we already touched on how word stress can completely change a word's meaning.
Right, like with photograph versus photography.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the script takes it a step further. It highlights sentence stress as well.
Oh, okay.
It shows you how emphasizing different words within a sentence can dramatically alter its meaning.
Okay, do you have an example?
Of course. So they use the phrase, I didn't say H.E. stole the money.
Okay.
Now imagine stressing each word in turn.
Right.
You could be accusing different people.
Oh, wow.
Or even denying the accusation entirely just by shifting the emphasis.
That's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Like it adds a whole other layer of meaning.
Right.
Yeah, beyond the words themselves.
Exactly.
And then there's intonation,
Yeah.
the rising and falling tones of our voice.
Yes.
So the script suggests practicing with simple phrases like, I can't believe it. With a rising tone, that's amazing. With a falling tone.
Yeah.
Do those small changes really make that much of a difference?
Absolutely. Think of it like adding punctuation to your spoken words.
Oh, okay.
A rising tone at the end of a sentence can turn a statement into a question,
Right.
while a falling tone can express certainty, finality.
Okay.
It's crucial for conveying your meaning and sounding more natural.
So it's like adding emotion and emphasis to your words.
Excellent.
Is this something that people often struggle with when learning English?
It can be,
Okay.
especially for learners whose native languages have different intonation patterns.
Right.
But the good news is it's something you can improve with practice.
Okay, good.
The script even suggests recording yourself speaking
Oh, wow.
and listening back.
I know. It can be cringy.
It can be, but it's a great way to identify areas where your intonation might need a little work.
Yeah, for sure. I can see how that'd be helpful,
Yeah,
even if it's a little embarrassing at first.
that's a good tool.
So are there any other techniques that the script recommends for improving pronunciation?
Well, they suggest some interesting exercises,
Okay.
like repeating phrases while exaggerating the intonation and stress patterns.
So just really going over the top with it.
Yeah, it might feel silly, but it helps to really internalize the rhythm and flow of the language.
I'm all for silly if it works.
Me too.
Like a workout for your voice.
Exactly.
Thriller.
Another technique is called shadowing, where you listen to a native speaker and try to mimic their pronunciation and intonation.
Oh, interesting.
You can use podcasts, audiobooks, even movie scenes.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah,
Like having a personal pronunciation coach right in your ear.
exactly. Plus, it's a fun way to immerse yourself in the language.
And speaking of immersion, the script emphasizes that a lot.
Right.
It encourages you to surround yourself with English as much as possible.
Yes, watch movies, listen to music, read books, chat with native speakers if you can.
Yeah.
The key is to make English a part of your daily life.
Not just something you study in a textbook.
Exactly.
You know, it's interesting they bring up immersion
Yeah.
because earlier when we were discussing those advanced vocabulary words, I was thinking, how often is someone really going to use a word like ostentatious in casual conversation?
Right.
But if you're immersing yourself in the language, you're bound to come across it in different contexts.
Exactly. That's a great point.
Yeah.
Immersion helps you absorb those nuances of the language in a way that just memorizing definitions can't.
Right.
You start to understand how words are used in different situations.
Yeah.
You develop a more natural feel for the language.
So immersion isn't just about practicing speaking.
Right.
It's about absorbing the language through listening, reading, and watching.
Yes, making it a part of your overall experience.
Okay, let's shift gears for a moment and revisit that networking scenario.
Right.
I'm curious to hear more about how they incorporate all these fluency techniques into that real-world situation.
Sure. So you remember that the scenario starts with a confident introduction,
Right?
but then they encourage you to move beyond the typical small talk.
Mm-hmm.
Ask a more engaging question.
Like, what inspired you to get into your field?
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that question.
It's a great way to show genuine interest
Right.
and start a more meaningful conversation.
What else do they recommend?
They suggest transitioning smoothly to related topics. Showing that you're actively listening and adding to the conversation. You might say something like, "That's fascinating. Have you considered expanding into other markets?"
Okay, yeah.
Keeps the conversation flowing, and it allows you to showcase your knowledge and insights
Right.
without being too pushy.
It's all about finding that balance
Yeah,
between being confident and being engaging.
for sure.
Not an easy feat.
No, it's not.
But this scenario seems to provide a pretty solid framework
It does.
for navigating those tricky social interactions.
Exactly.
Okay, so they've covered introductions,
Mhm.
engaging questions, smooth transitions, even closing the conversation gracefully.
Right.
But can you really master all that in an hour?
Well, like we said earlier, fluency is a journey,
Right?
not a destination.
Yeah.
So while an hour might not be enough to make you a master networker,
Okay.
this scenario provides a valuable blueprint.
Right.
And you can adapt these techniques to other social situations as well.
So it's about taking those core principles, confidence, clarity, adaptability,
Yes.
and applying them to any interaction where
Yeah.
you want to communicate effectively in English.
Exactly.
And that brings us to the final section of the masterclass script.
Okay.
Remember those 3 key tips they emphasized?
Immerse yourself.
Speak fearlessly.
Reflect and refine.
Right. This seemed like pretty solid pieces of advice,
Yeah.
but what do they really mean by immerse yourself?
Right.
Are they talking about moving to an English-speaking country?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
While that would certainly be immersive,
Right.
there are plenty of ways to create an English-speaking environment wherever you are.
Okay.
You can watch movies and TV shows with English subtitles, listen to podcasts and audiobooks,
Right.
read news articles and blogs.
Okay.
Key is to find something you enjoy and make it a regular part of your routine.
So it's about making English a part of your everyday life,
Exactly.
not just something you study in isolation. Okay, what about that second tip? Speak fearlessly. That's easier said than done for a lot of people.
It is, yeah.
Any advice for overcoming that fear?
Well, the script encourages you to kind of reframe your thinking about mistakes.
Okay.
Instead of seeing them as failures, view them as opportunities to learn and grow.
It's about embracing the journey
Exactly.
and accepting that you're not going to be perfect right from the start.
Exactly. The more you speak, the more comfortable and confident you'll become.
Right.
Don't be afraid to seek out opportunities to practice,
Okay.
whether it's with a language partner, online communities, or even just talking to yourself in English.
Those are great suggestions.
Yeah.
Now, what about that last tip? Reflect and refine. What are some concrete ways that someone can put that into practice?
Self-awareness is key here.
Okay.
Record yourself speaking English, listen back to it.
Right.
Take note of areas where you could improve. Maybe it's pronunciation, maybe it's grammar, maybe it's the flow of your sentences.
Right. Yeah.
The act of listening to yourself critically can be incredibly revealing.
For sure. And these days, there are so many tools to help you do that.
There are.
Like language learning apps often have recording features. And you can even find online communities that are dedicated to pronunciation practice.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of simply paying attention to how native speakers use the language.
Oh, okay.
Listen for those subtle nuances of pronunciation, intonation, and rhythm.
Right.
The more you observe and imitate, the more natural your English will become.
So it's about being a conscious learner,
Yes,
actively seeking out feedback, and working on those areas where you want to improve.
exactly.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground in this second part of our deep dive.
We have.
We explored pronunciation techniques, the importance of immersion. We even revisited that networking scenario,
We did.
and we dug into those 3 key tips for continued learning.
Yes.
Immerse yourself, speak fearlessly, reflect and refine. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into this masterclass, the one that promises to unlock advanced English fluency in just an hour.
Yeah, big promises.
Huge! So we've unpacked a lot of those strategies,
Really?
We've experimented with pronunciation, even explored that networking scenario.
Yep.
Now let's step back, consider
All right.
what are the real takeaways
Yeah,
here?
what are the gems?
What can someone actually use to boost their English fluency?
Good question.
So it's been quite a journey, right?
It really has, yeah.
We've gone from those kind of building blocks of fluency, confidence, clarity, adaptability,
Right.
to some very specific techniques
Yeah.
like connected speech, mastering intonation, even sprinkling in some of those colorful idioms.
For sure.
I think we even played vocal coach for a while,
Oh, did?
trying out some of those pronunciation exercises.
Yeah, that was fun.
It was fun. So as we wrap up, what stands out to you as the most valuable takeaway from this whole thing?
For me, it's the focus on practical application.
Okay.
This script doesn't just throw a bunch of rules at you.
Right.
It gives you concrete examples, it encourages you to experiment, and it even puts you in a real-world situation.
Yeah, like with that networking event.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about taking those concepts and making them usable in your daily life.
Yeah, it's not about reaching some level of perfection.
Right.
It's about using the language to connect with others, to express yourself,
Yeah,
to navigate the world around you.
for sure.
And it reminds you that fluency is an ongoing journey.
It is.
It's not a destination.
Not at all.
You know, early on, I was pretty skeptical about that whole fluency in an hour thing.
Yeah, me too.
But I have to admit, this masterclass offers a pretty solid springboard for anyone who wants to improve their English.
Absolutely.
It gives you a taste of what's possible
Yeah.
and inspires you to actually take action.
For sure.
So for our listener who's been with us this whole time, taking it all in, what's the one piece of advice you would leave them with?
I would say don't wait for perfection.
Okay.
Just start speaking.
Right.
Embrace every opportunity to practice.
Yeah.
Even if it feels a bit awkward at first, every mistake is a learning opportunity.
That's true.
Each interaction brings you closer to fluency.
I love that. It's about taking those small steps,
Yeah.
being consistent, and celebrating those wins along the way.
Exactly.
And remember, you're not alone on this journey.
Not at all.
There are tons of resources out there, language learning apps, online communities, podcasts like ours,
For sure.
all there to support you.
Absolutely.
So find what works best for you. Stay curious.
Yeah.
Never stop exploring the language
I like that.
and have fun with it.
Yes.
Learning a language shouldn't feel like a chore.
No, it should be enjoyable.
It should be enriching.
Absolutely.
So embrace the challenges, celebrate your successes, and never stop trying to be the most confident and fluent version of yourself. That's a perfect note to end on. So thanks for joining us for this deep dive into English fluency.
It's been fun.
We hope you've gained some valuable insights.
Yeah.
And feel inspired to continue your own journey.
Absolutely. And now that you've heard all this, what's one area of your English fluency that you're going to focus on? Until next time, keep practicing, keep learning, and keep those language fires burning.
See you next time.
All right, so are you ready to dive in? Today, we're going to help you sound like, well, a natural English speaker.
Like you were born speaking it, right?
Exactly. And we're going to do that with a script.
Oh, a script. For what?
It's for a video for English language learners.
Cool. What's the topic?
Phrasal verbs.
Ah, phrasal verbs. Those can be tricky.
Yeah, they can be, but this script, it breaks them down by learner level.
Yeah, that's helpful. So we can...
Yeah, so we'll sort of jump around, find the most interesting parts, no matter what your level is.
Yeah, let's uncover the secrets of sounding natural and fluent.
Exactly. So I was looking at the beginner section, and it's funny how many...
Beginner section. Okay.
Yeah, so, basic phrasal verbs. And some of them are so common, we don't even think about them.
Like what?
Like get up. I mean, we all do it every morning.
It's true. We do. Or go to sleep. These are things we do every day.
Right. And even something like sit down. It's not just about taking a seat. It's like an invitation.
Yeah, it sets the scene. Like, sit down, dinner's ready. Or, please, sit down, make yourself comfortable.
Exactly. It adds a whole other layer of meaning.
And it's so natural.
And, another one that I thought was interesting is turn on and turn off.
Oh, yeah, we use those all the time.
Like turn on the lights, turn off the oven.
It's like we're constantly interacting with our world through these verbs.
And they often come in pairs, right?
Ooh.
With opposite meanings.
Learn one. You got the other one too?
Yeah. And another pair, put on and take off.
Oh, yeah. Clothes, shoes, you name it.
Exactly. You put on your clothes in the morning, take them off at night.
And again, it's so natural, so effortless.
It is. It's like a hidden code.
A code to unlock fluency.
I love that. Okay, what about pick up? That one's interesting because it can have multiple meanings.
Yeah, you can pick up a book, pick up your friend from the airport.
Right. The context is key.
It tells you what it means.
It's like a puzzle, but a fun one.
It is. Okay, another fun one. Look for. Everyone's always looking for something.
Right. Your keys, your phone, that missing sock.
Have you seen my keys? I've been looking for them everywhere.
Exactly. And, it's not just about physical objects.
You can look for a solution to a problem, look for information.
You're right. It's about a search, a quest.
And we're always on a quest for something, aren't we?
That's a great point. Okay, so we've talked about some pretty basic phrasal verbs.
Yeah, just the tip of the iceberg.
But now I want to get into some that add a bit more color.
Yeah, let's spice things up a bit.
Let's express some feelings, some opinions.
Let's dive deeper.
I'm ready. Are you?
Let's go! It's amazing, right, how phrasal verbs can be so simple, but also so expressive.
Yeah, it's like they add this whole other level of meaning.
Exactly. Like give up, for example.
Oh, yeah, give up. We've all been there.
Right. That feeling of, I can't do this anymore.
Like when I tried to make that 3-tiered cake for my friend's birthday, I almost gave up.
Oh, no. What happened?
The first layer, it just collapsed.
Oh, that's frustrating.
It was. I wanted to throw in the towel, but he didn't.
Well, good for you, perseverance. But you see, that's what give up captures, that feeling.
It does. Okay, what about run out of? That seems pretty basic.
It does, but it's not just about having nothing left. It's like there's a sense of urgency.
Urgency. How so?
Like running out of time on a deadline.
Oh, yeah, or running out of patience.
Exactly. Or even running out of gas in your car.
That's a good one. Okay, what about call off? Is that the same as cancel?
Well, they're similar, but call off is more sudden, more unexpected.
Oh, I see. Like calling off a wedding.
Exactly. Or calling off a search.
Wow. That does add a sense of drama.
It does. It's like everything's changing.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit. What about look after? That seems pretty simple.
It does, but it's more than just watching something. It's about taking care of it,
Oh, like looking after a child or a pet.
Yeah, or even a plant. You're responsible for it.
You're right. There's a sense of responsibility there.
Yeah.
Okay. Now this one I find interesting. Find out.
Find out. It's like discovering something new.
It is. Like a secret.
Exactly. You can find out the truth, find out someone's secret.
Or find out how a story ends.
Right. It's all about that moment of revelation.
It is. Okay. And speaking of moments, what about work out? Now that one has multiple meanings.
It does. You can work out at the gym.
Right. Get those muscles working.
Or you can work out a problem.
Find a solution.
Exactly. So versatile, right?
It is. Okay, how about throwaway? It seems pretty straightforward.
It does, but think about it. It's not just about getting rid of something.
What else could it be?
It can be about letting go, like throwing away old ideas, old habits.
Wow, I never thought of it that way.
It's like a fresh start.
I like that. Okay, last one for this round. Catch up. Now that one sounds pretty social.
It is. It's about connecting with people,
Yeah, like catching up with friends.
Exactly. Or catching up on work if you've been away.
Oh, right. So it can be social or professional.
It can. It's about bridging that gap, whatever it may be.
I like that. Okay, so we've covered some pretty interesting phrasal verbs so far.
We have, and we're just getting started.
I know. Are you ready for the advanced level?
Bring it on. I want to see what other gems we can uncover.
Okay, let's dive in. Okay, so we're back and ready to tackle some advanced phrasal verbs.
The big leagues.
I know, right? But honestly, looking at some of these, I'm a little intimidated.
Oh, which one's got you stumped?
Well, like put up with, for example. It just seems so negative.
It can be, yeah. But sometimes you need to express that feeling, like tolerating something.
Okay, I see what you mean, like putting up with noisy neighbors or something.
Exactly. Or a long commute, or even bad weather. It's about dealing with those less than ideal situations.
Okay, that makes sense. What about bring up? That one seems a bit more, I don't know, delicate.
It is. It's about introducing a topic, but in a smooth way.
So not just blurting something out.
Right. Like if you want to talk about something sensitive, you bring it up carefully.
Right. I get it. Okay, now this one I always struggle with. Back out. Does it always make you sound unreliable?
Not necessarily. It can mean changing your mind, but it doesn't always have to be negative.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, imagine you agreed to go to a party, but then you get sick. You have to back out.
Oh, right. So it's not like you're breaking a promise. It's just a change of plans.
Exactly. It's all about the context.
Context is key.
Yeah.
Okay, what about step up? That one sounds more positive.
It is. It's about taking action, taking responsibility.
Like stepping up to a challenge.
Exactly. Or stepping up to help someone.
Oh, I like that. Okay, take over. Now that one sounds a bit intense.
It can be. It's about taking control of something.
I'm just taking over a company.
Yeah, or even something smaller, like taking over the cooking when your friend's tired.
Right. It's about being in charge. Okay, last one. Break down. That one seems like it has a million meanings.
It does. A car can break down. A plan can break down. Even a person can break down.
Wow, so many possibilities. It's amazing how one phrasal verb can be so versatile.
It is, and that's the beauty of phrasal verbs. They add so much color and nuance to the language.
I totally agree. Well, I think we've broken down quite a few phrasal verbs today.
We have, and hopefully our listeners feel more confident using them.
Exactly. Remember, it's all about practice and having fun with the language.
Don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how you learn.
That's right. So, to all our listeners out there, keep exploring the world of phrasal verbs. And who knows, maybe you'll even discover some new favorites along the way.
And if you do, be sure to share them with us. We'd love to hear about your phrasal verb adventures.
Until next time, happy learning.
Ever feel like you're just one or two phrases away from sounding like really fluent in English?
Yeah.
Well, we're diving into a podcast script today. It's called Fluent Conversations, and they say they found 15 of those magic words.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah, so it's not about like sounding super smart, right?
Right.
It's about that natural flow you hear like native speakers
Years
using like I can explain something perfectly, but it'll still sound like I'm reading it from a textbook.
Oh, for sure.
So to show us how it's done, this script has a conversation between these two friends, Emma and Jake,
Okay.
to show these words in action.
Okay, I like that.
And then it breaks down each word.
Gotcha.
Ready to eavesdrop.
Let's do it.
Okay, so Emma starts by saying, I ran into Sarah yesterday at the mall.
Okay.
Now Jake, he jokes that he pictures her like literally crashing into Sarah,
Uh,
which I thought was hilarious.
yeah.
But it's funny because run into is one of those phrases that doesn't translate literally, like it means to meet by chance.
Yeah, yeah.
But think about it, doesn't it sound way more natural than just saying, I met Sarah?
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, it's casual, right?
Yeah.
Off the cuff.
But I think there's like even more to it than just being casual.
Ooh, okay.
So choosing ran into instead of met, it kind of shows like a cultural preference.
Okay.
So in English, we often like to use more indirect language,
Huh.
especially when we're talking about something that like we weren't expecting, like running into someone.
I never thought about it like that.
Yeah,
So it's not just what you say, it's how you say it.
exactly.
There's so much packed into these like simple words.
For sure.
Okay, next phrase. Emma asks Jake, could you give me a hand with these boxes?
Okay.
Of course, Jake knows she just needs help, right?
Right.
Not a literal hand.
Aha.
It's another example of this like indirect language thing.
Yeah, I was going to say definitely.
So give me a hand. It makes it sound nicer, right?
Yeah.
It's more like we're working together, not me demanding something.
Exactly. Exactly.
It assumes that like we're already on good terms.
Right, right, right.
Interesting. So even when we're asking for help, English speakers, we like to beat around the bush a little bit.
Well, it's not really like avoiding the question. It's more about,
Okay.
being polite
Okay.
and not sounding too direct or demanding.
Makes sense. Okay, so then Emma says, we need to wrap up this meeting soon.
Okay.
So wrap up, I feel like this is one of those words that you can use all the time
Oh, yeah.
in
Absolutely.
so many situations.
It works for meetings, projects,
Yeah,
even just conversations.
exactly. And what I think is so cool about this is it paints a picture in your mind, right?
Right.
It's like you're really tying everything up together. Yeah, I can almost see it.
Yeah, and I think because it's so visual like that, it makes it more memorable.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, and easier to use.
Okay, next one. Emma says, I'll keep an eye on your bag while you get coffee.
Okay?
So it's more than just watching it, right?
Okay.
There's like responsibility there.
Yeah.
Like saying, I got you covered.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's so effective. It's
Oh.
like there's that deeper meaning,
Yeah.
It's not just the words, but it shows the trust between Emma and Jake.
Okay, up next, Emma says, hang on, I need to grab my jacket before we go.
Okay.
It's so simple, right?
Yeah.
But like so important for every day.
Oh, yeah. I use it all the time.
Who hasn't yelled that running out the door?
Yeah.
But like it's friendly, right?
Yeah.
It's not like an order. It's just like, hey, wait a sec.
It's just a quick little, hold on.
Yeah.
And it also, like, it implies it'll be quick,
Yeah.
You're not asking for a lot.
Okay, now this next one, I feel this one in my soul.
Okay?
Emma says, I messed up my presentation, but my teacher was really understanding.
Oh, yeah?
Mess up. It's interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, it doesn't sound as bad as like fail. Fail sounds so final.
Totally.
This is more like you tripped up, but you can recover.
Yeah. And it also shows that she's, like, taking ownership,
Yeah.
But without beating yourself up too much about it.
Which is good life advice in general, I think.
Right.
Okay, now Emma asks, Jake, can you drop me off at the bus station?
Mm-hmm.
Now this one's interesting
Oh, how so?
because it kind of shows how we have certain social rules just with language.
Oh, boy.
Like you wouldn't just ask a stranger to drop you off,
Right.
You kind of doing them a favor.
Yep.
It assumes you already go in that way, and you're cool with going a little out of your way.
Yeah, exactly.
It's way more natural than saying, can you please transport me to the bus station using your vehicle?
Oh, my God, yeah.
Okay, what does Emma say next? So Emma says, I'll check it out and let you know.
Okay.
It's the perfect thing to say if you want to show you're interested.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's way better than just saying okay,
Right.
you're actually going to do something.
Yeah, exactly. Even though it's simple,
Yeah.
it shows you're thinking ahead.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Okay, then Emma mentions she has to come up with a good idea for our project.
Oh, yeah, this is something we can all relate to.
Ugh, tell me about it.
Whether it's for work
Mm-hmm.
or just trying to figure out what to make for dinner.
Seriously.
It's that mental struggle. You're trying to make something new.
Okay, next up, Emma gets excited and says, I'm looking forward to our trip next week.
Okay.
This one is just pure excitement, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway.
And it's cool how she brings Jake into it,
Yeah.
by saying our trip.
Yeah.
It makes them closer because they're both excited.
Okay, but then reality hits. Emma says, I need to figure out how to fix this problem.
Yeah.
We've all been there.
Oh, for sure.
This just shows, you're not going to give up.
Right.
You're going to find a way to fix it.
Exactly.
So we already saw her mess up earlier, and now she says, I was late, but I made up for it by bringing coffee.
Oh, nice.
Smooth, right?
Right,
You messed up, but you're going to make it right.
Yeah, it's a little apology, but without actually saying sorry.
I like that.
It's you messed up,
Mm-hmm.
but you're trying to fix it.
Okay, then things get a little dramatic. Jake says he passed out from exhaustion.
Okay.
So it means to faint, right?
Yeah.
But by adding from exhaustion,
Right.
you really know how tired he must have been. He couldn't stay awake.
Yeah.
Okay, we're getting to the end of their conversation, and Jake says she showed up late to the party.
Okay.
So he's just saying what happened, right?
Right.
But showed up, it kind of sounds like he's judging her a little.
Yeah, it was her choice to be late.
Yeah.
Not something, that she couldn't control.
Interesting.
Yeah. So even a little word like that, it can show what you really think.
Okay, finally, Jake says we had to put off our meeting until next week.
Mm.
I feel like this is so much nicer than saying we canceled.
Oh,
It's not gone forever.
Right. It's just waiting for a better time.
Yeah, we're still committed.
Exactly.
So that's all 15 words
Yeah.
in action.
That was cool.
And remember, the podcast, we're deep diving into fluent conversations.
Mhm.
They give you a challenge.
Oh, fun.
So they have 3 sentences.
Okay.
And you have to figure out which word fits best.
Okay.
First one, I link my keys, and now I can't find them anywhere.
Oh, I hate when that happens.
So relatable.
The perfect word is messed up
Okay.
because it's your fault, and you're frustrated because of it.
Second challenge, I'll blank your dog while you're on vacation.
Okay.
So this one is all about taking care of something, right?
Right.
So the answer is keep an eye on. Much better than saying, I will supervise your canine.
Oh, my God. Yeah. Way too formal.
Okay, last challenge, let's blank dinner until next week.
Okay.
So we're just moving it to later.
Yeah.
The best word here is put off. It's like hitting the pause button.
Exactly.
I love how, effortlessly those words fit into the sentences.
Yeah. It's like they were made for them.
And that's why it's so important to master these, everyday words.
Right.
Because they make you sound so much more fluent.
Exactly. It's like building blocks for your conversation.
So we learned a lot, huh?
Yeah, I think so.
Just from those 15 words.
Right. And just hearing them in a normal conversation.
It's kind of crazy how much we can pick up just from that.
It really shows you that fluency isn't about, knowing every word in the dictionary.
Right.
It's more about how you use those words to connect with someone.
To really get your point across.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what does this all mean for our listener?
Well, it means they can totally improve their fluency
Okay.
just by looking at the phrases they use every day.
Yeah. Instead of just saying stuff without thinking.
Right. Actually think about why you're using that word.
Okay. Yeah.
And how it makes the other person feel.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And if you can do that, you'll sound so much more natural.
And confidence is... So, okay, we get it. We got to use the right words. But, how do we actually do that?
Good question. Well, I have a challenge, kind of like in the Fluent Conversations podcast.
Okay.
Think about some other simple phrases that you could start using today.
That would make us sound, more natural. Ooh, that's a tough one.
Yeah, but I think, one thing you could do is, pay attention when you're watching a movie.
Okay.
or a TV show and see how they say things.
Oh, yeah, steal their lines, basically. And then, like, actually use them when you're talking to someone.
Right, don't be scared to try it out.
Yeah, and see what works, see what feels good.
Exactly, it's like a little experiment.
I love
We
that.
can even, like, all share what we find.
Oh, yeah, that would be cool.
Everyone can, like, learn from each other.
Because at the end of the day, language is about connecting with people, right?
Yeah, it's about, like, building relationships, sharing what you think.
Exactly.
And the better you are at English, the easier that is to do.
So true. So keep exploring, keep experimenting, and keep those conversations flowing.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Until next time, happy language adventures. All right, buckle up, because today we're diving deep into something you specifically requested.
Oh, yeah.
Boosting your vocabulary.
Yes.
For more fluent and confident English.
It's going to be good.
Now, before you panic, we're not expecting you to memorize the entire dictionary.
Not at all. This is about those key words, the kind that can make a real difference in how you express yourself, especially in those situations you mentioned where you want to feel more confident and articulate.
Exactly. And luckily, the source material we're using is super organized with 60 powerful words.
Wow.
Grouped into 6 helpful categories.
I like it.
Though it is kind of funny that the source itself is structured like a podcast episode.
Very meta.
Yeah.
But we'll skip those instructions and jump right into the good stuff.
Okay, let's unpack this first category, expressing opinions.
Okay.
The first word that jumps out at me is concur.
Ooh.
It just sounds so much more decisive than a plain old I agree, you know?
Absolutely. Concur implies you've actually considered the information and come to a thoughtful agreement, which could be especially powerful, say, in a professional setting,
Right.
where you want to project competence.
Oh, that's a good point. It's not just about using fancy words. It's about choosing the right word to convey the specific message you want.
Exactly. And speaking of conveying messages, the next word, imply, reminds me of something you mentioned. You said you sometimes struggle to give feedback delicately.
Oh, yeah.
Well, imply could be your secret weapon there.
Ooh, tell me more.
So instead of directly criticizing, you can imply your suggestion.
Okay.
For example, instead of saying that report was too long,
Right.
you could say, I wonder if the report's key points could be summarized more concisely.
Oh.
You're implying that it needs to be shorter without directly saying it.
That's brilliant. It softens the criticism while still getting the message across. I can definitely see myself using that.
See, it's all about understanding the nuances of these words and how they can be applied in real-life situations.
Okay, I'm starting to get really excited about this. What else do we have in this category?
Well, we have refute, which is perfect for dismantling a flimsy argument. Politely, of course.
Right.
Remember those meetings where someone proposes an idea that just doesn't hold up?
Oh, I know those meetings all too well.
Refute allows you to disagree respectfully while presenting evidence or logic to back up your stance.
So instead of just saying, I disagree, I could say something like, I understand your point, but I'd like to refute it by presenting these statistics.
Exactly. It shows that you've considered the other perspective, but have a well-reasoned counter-argument. Very effective.
Okay, I'm loving these words already. Now, what about this pair, imply and infer? I always get those mixed up.
Ah, yes, a classic linguistic conundrum. Remember that example we just discussed about implying feedback?
Yes.
Well, if someone inferred from your subtle suggestion that the report needed to be shorter,
Right.
that would be on them drawing a conclusion from what you implied.
Okay, so imply is on the speaker's side and infer is on the listener's side. Got it.
You got it. Now, there's another word of this category that I think would be particularly useful for you.
Okay.
Assert. You mentioned wanting to be more vocal in meetings, right?
Oh, yes. Sometimes I feel like I fade into the background a bit.
Well, assert is your power word. Imagine yourself saying, I want to assert that we need to prioritize user experience in this project.
Wow. I can already feel the difference. Assert just has this air of confidence and conviction.
Exactly. It shows that you're not afraid to speak your mind and that you believe in the value of your contributions.
This is fantastic. I'm already feeling more empowered to express my opinions effectively. Okay, what's next on our vocabulary adventure?
Let's move on to personal qualities. This category is all about the words that describe who we are at our core.
Ooh, this sounds intriguing and a little bit introspective, perhaps.
Absolutely. For example, we have meticulous,
Okay.
which describes someone who pays incredible attention to detail.
Right.
Now, thinking back to your work, I know you take pride in delivering high-quality results. Would you say meticulous is a word that resonates with you?
Definitely. I'm always striving for perfection, whether it's editing a script or organizing an event.
So owning that word and using it to describe your work ethic could really enhance how others perceive your strengths. You could say something like, I'm meticulous in my approach to project management, ensuring that every detail is accounted for.
I love that. It's not just about sounding smart, it's about accurately representing my skills and values.
Precisely. And speaking of values, the next word, resilient, is one that I think we can all relate to.
Oh, absolutely. Life throws curveballs, and it's all about how we bounce back.
Exactly. Resilience isn't about avoiding challenges.
Right.
It's about having the inner strength to overcome them.
Mm-hmm.
And remember that setback you told me about how you handled that difficult client situation?
Oh, yeah.
That's a perfect example of your resilience in action.
You're right. I never thought of it that way, but I did manage to navigate that situation effectively and learn from the experience.
Exactly. So when you encounter future challenges, remember that experience and the strength you demonstrated. That's what resilience is all about.
Wow, this is really powerful stuff. I'm starting to see how these words aren't just about expanding my vocabulary. They're about reframing my thinking and recognizing my own strengths.
That's exactly the point. Now, before we move on, I noticed that candid appears in two categories:
Oh.
personal qualities and sophisticated conversations. I wonder what that tells us about the importance of honesty.
That's interesting. Maybe being candid is more valuable than we sometimes realize, both in our personal lives and in those more complex discussions.
It's definitely something to ponder. So before we delve into those sophisticated conversations, let's take a moment to reflect. If you had to choose 3 words from this personal qualities list to describe yourself, which ones would you pick and why?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think I would choose meticulous, resilient, and maybe insightful. I feel like those words really capture my approach to work and life in general.
Those are excellent choices. And they highlight the power of owning those qualities and using them to your advantage.
All right, I'm ready to dive into the next category, words for making conversations sound more sophisticated. But I have to admit, I sometimes feel a little silly using big words in casual conversations. Like, will people think I'm trying too hard?
I understand that concern, but think of it this way. These words aren't about showing off.
Right.
They're about expressing yourself more precisely and vividly. It's like having a wider range of colors to paint with.
Okay, that's a helpful analogy. So it's less about sounding smart and more about using the right tool for the job.
Exactly. For instance, the word ubiquitous. Yes, it sounds a bit academic, but it's also incredibly useful for describing something that's everywhere. Like, remember how we were talking about that new social media app everyone's using?
Oh, yeah? The one that's suddenly taken over all my feeds?
Instead of just saying it's everywhere, you could say, that app has become ubiquitous. It just adds a touch of sophistication and precision.
You're right, it elevates the language a bit without sounding pretentious. Okay, I'm starting to see the appeal. What other sophisticated words do we have here?
Well, there's ephemeral,
Okay.
which describes something fleeting or short-lived.
Right.
Now, think about that feeling you describe when a really great book ends, or when you finish a project you've poured your heart into.
Oh, I know that feeling well. A mix of satisfaction and a little bit of sadness that it's over.
Exactly. It's a bittersweet feeling, and ephemeral captures that perfectly. You could say the joy of finishing that project was wonderful, but also somewhat ephemeral.
That's beautiful. I'll definitely be adding ephemeral to my vocabulary arsenal.
And, it doesn't have to be reserved for deep philosophical discussions. You could even use it to describe something as simple as a beautiful sunset.
Oh, that's true. The sunset's colors were vibrant yet ephemeral. I love it.
See, these words can add depth and richness to any conversation, even everyday ones. Now, what about notorious? It's a fun one.
Ooh, yes. It's like that restaurant is notorious for its terrible service, or that politician is notorious for flip-flopping on issues.
Exactly. It conveys a sense of infamy or bad reputation, adding a little bit of spice to your storytelling.
Okay, I'm ready to move on to the next category, words for work and professional settings. I'll be honest, I initially thought I could skip this section since I'm not in a super corporate environment.
That's a common misconception. While these words might be frequently used in offices, understanding them can be valuable in any setting where you're collaborating with others.
You're right. For example, delegation. It's not just about bosses assigning tasks. It's about effectively distributing responsibilities in any group project, even planning a volunteer event or a community initiative.
Exactly. Understanding delegation can help you be a more effective leader even in informal settings. And then there's facilitate, which is such a useful word for anyone who wants to help things run smoothly.
Oh, I love facilitate. It's like I want to facilitate a brainstorming session where everyone feels comfortable sharing their ideas.
Exactly. It implies a sense of guidance and support, creating an environment where everyone can contribute effectively. Now, I know you mentioned sometimes feeling overwhelmed by group projects. Delegation and facilitate are perfect examples of words that can empower you to take charge and guide those projects towards success.
Wow, that's a really empowering perspective. I'm already feeling more confident about handling those collaborative situations.
And even a word like synergy, which might make you roll your eyes a bit.
Oh, definitely. It's such a buzzword.
It is, but putting aside the corporate jargon, the underlying concept is actually quite valuable. Synergy is about recognizing that the combined effort of a group can be greater than the sum of its individual parts.
Okay, when you put it that way, it does make sense. It's about the power of collaboration and how different skills and perspectives can come together to create something truly amazing.
Exactly. And that's a powerful concept to understand regardless of your work environment.
All right, I'm starting to see the value in these work and professional settings words. They might not be the most glamorous, but they are incredibly useful for clear communication and effective teamwork.
And speaking of clear communication, let's move on to a category that's all about expressing ourselves authentically, emotions and reactions. This is where things get really interesting.
Oh, I love this category. These words are so much more nuanced and evocative than just saying happy or sad.
Exactly. It's like having a whole spectrum of colors to describe the complexities of human emotion. For example, exasperated. It perfectly captures that feeling of utter frustration and annoyance, like when you're dealing with a never-ending queue or a computer that just won't cooperate.
Oh, tell me about it. I felt that way just this morning when I was trying to book a flight online and the website kept crashing.
I can imagine it's much more specific and vivid than just saying annoyed, right?
Absolutely. And then there's elated. It's not just happy. It's a feeling of pure joy and exhilaration, like when you achieve a long-awaited goal or receive wonderful news.
Exactly. And what's interesting is that understanding a wider range of emotion words can actually help us to better regulate our own emotions.
Oh, how so?
When we can accurately label our emotions, we can start to understand the triggers that cause them and develop strategies for coping with challenging situations.
That's so true. If I can pinpoint exactly what I'm feeling, it's easier to figure out how to address the issue or shift my mindset. It's like having a roadmap for my own emotional well-being.
Exactly. It's about becoming more emotionally intelligent, both in understanding ourselves and in empathizing with others.
Okay, this is fascinating. So it's not just about expressing ourselves, it's about understanding the emotions behind the words.
Precisely. And speaking of understanding, how are you feeling right now?
Let me see. I think I'm feeling a mix of intrigued and inspired. This deep dive is really opening my eyes to the power of language.
That's wonderful to hear, and it's a perfect example of how expanding our vocabulary can enhance our self-awareness and emotional intelligence.
All right, I'm excited to explore our final category, words for everyday conversations. These are the words we use all the time, but maybe we could be using them more effectively.
Exactly. It's about refining our everyday language to express ourselves with greater clarity and impact. For example, the word tedious. We all have those tasks or activities that we find boring and repetitive.
Oh, absolutely. Filing paperwork, cleaning the bathroom, waiting on hold. The list goes on.
Exactly. But instead of just saying, ugh, this is so boring, you could say, this paperwork is incredibly tedious. It just adds a touch of eloquence to your complaint.
Huh, I love that. It's like elevating the art of complaining.
Precisely. And then we have substantial.
Okay.
Which is a word you can use to describe something significant or meaningful.
Right.
It could be a substantial meal, a substantial accomplishment, or even a substantial improvement in your communication skills.
Ooh, I like that. It adds a sense of weight and importance.
Exactly. And finally, we have inevitable, which is a great word to use when discussing trends or events that seem certain to happen.
Like, it's inevitable that technology will continue to advance at a rapid pace, or it's inevitable that this cake will be devoured in minutes.
Huh. Both excellent examples.
You know, I'm really impressed with how versatile these everyday conversations words are. They might seem simple at first glance, but they can add so much depth and nuance to our everyday language.
Exactly. It's all about choosing the right words to convey our thoughts and feelings with precision and clarity. And remember, this deep dive is just the beginning of your vocabulary journey.
That's right. It's about continually exploring language, experimenting with new words, and finding those hidden gems that allow us to express ourselves more authentically and effectively.
And who knows, maybe one day you'll be the one casually dropping ephemeral and ubiquitous into everyday conversations, leaving everyone in awe of your eloquence.
Huh, I wouldn't mind that, but seriously, this has been such an eye-opening experience. I'm feeling inspired to pay more attention to my language and to embrace the power of words.
That's fantastic. And remember, the journey of language exploration is a lifelong adventure. There's always something new to learn, and the possibilities for expression are endless.
You know, as we wrap up this deep dive into powerful vocabulary,
Right.
I think it's important to remember that this isn't just about sounding smarter.
Absolutely, it's about so much more than that.
Right. We've talked about how the right words can help you be more persuasive in meetings,
Yes.
give feedback more delicately, even navigate those tricky group projects you mentioned.
Precisely. A richer vocabulary is like having a sharper set of tools. It allows you to express yourself with more nuance and precision.
Uh-huh.
Whether you're writing an email,
Right.
giving a presentation,
Right.
Or just having a casual conversation.
It's like the difference between using a bull knife and a razor-sharp one.
Oh,
You can still get the job done with the dull knife, but the sharp one makes it so much easier and the results are so much cleaner.
I love that analogy. And just like with any skill building, a strong vocabulary takes practice.
Totally, but it's not about memorizing a bunch of fancy words and then awkwardly shoehorning them into every sentence.
Definitely not. It's about understanding the subtle shades of meaning, the contexts in which certain words are most effective,
Right.
and then using them in a way that feels natural and authentic to you.
So it's not just about the quantity of words we know, it's about the quality of our understanding and how we use them.
Exactly. And that's where the real power lies.
So, dear listener, as we wrap out this deep dive,
Okay.
we want to encourage you to embrace the journey of language exploration.
Don't be afraid to pick up a dictionary, browse through a thesaurus, or even just pay close attention to the language used in books, articles, and conversations.
And remember, even incorporating just one new word from this deep dive into your regular vocabulary can make a noticeable difference.
It's like adding a new color to your palette, a new spice to your cooking, a new tool to your toolbox.
And who knows, maybe you'll inspire someone else to start paying more attention to their own language.
Exactly. And that's how we create a ripple effect, raising the level of communication and understanding for everyone.
So with that in mind, we encourage you to go out there and experiment with your newfound vocabulary. Don't be afraid to make mistakes,
Yes.
to play with words, and to discover the endless possibilities of expression.
Because the power of language is within your grasp, and the journey of learning is one that never truly ends.
That wraps up our deep dive into powerful English vocabulary. We hope you've enjoyed this exploration and that you'll continue to discover the magic and the power of word.
Until next time, happy communicating.
All right, so today we're going to be looking at something that you might think you've already mastered.
Oh,
Formal versus informal English.
yeah.
You're probably already pretty good at it, right?
Most people are, yeah.
But we are going to go beyond just good. We're
Okay.
going for masterful.
I like it.
We're unlocking a secret code today
A secret code.
to help you tailor your communication
Okay,
to make the maximum impact possible.
right.
Whether you're trying to, be super credible in the boardroom
Right.
or just bond better with your friends.
Yeah, and that's the key, isn't it? It's not just about knowing the rules, but it's about understanding the why behind them.
The why.
Yeah, like why does a certain word choice make us feel a certain way? How do these subtle shifts in language, really impact our perceptions and interactions?
Yeah, and we're basing this deep dive on a podcast called Fluent Conversations.
Okay.
And one of the things that really surprised me was how easy it is to sabotage yourself by using the wrong level of formality.
Oh, interesting.
Like, imagine you're at a networking event.
Okay.
And you're trying to, project this air of confidence and professionalism.
Yeah.
But instead of saying something like, "Excuse me, would you mind if I joined your conversation?"
Whoa.
You blurt out, "Yo, can I hang with you guys?"
Oof, yeah, that's cringeworthy.
Right.
Yeah, it really highlights how these small choices we make can have a big impact on how we're perceived.
Totally.
It's not just about grammar. It's about social intelligence.
Ooh, I like that.
Understanding the unspoken rules of communication
Yeah.
and using them to your advantage.
Yeah, the podcast had this great example that really stuck with me.
Okay.
They compared the phrases, "I'm afraid I must decline your offer," to "Sorry, but I'll have to say no."
Yeah.
And it just made me realize that even when the message is the same, the feeling is totally different.
Absolutely. The first one feels very stiff and distant, almost like you're putting up a wall.
Right.
The second one is much warmer, more human,
Yeah.
even though it's still saying no.
Yeah.
It shows you can be direct, but you don't have to be harsh.
So how do we break down this code of formality?
Well,
Fluent Conversations identify 3 key elements.
okay.
And the first one is vocabulary.
Vocabulary, I think about it this way. Every word carries a certain weight, a certain formality level.
Okay.
For instance, require versus need, inquire versus ask.
Yeah.
Even something simple like assist versus help.
Oh, interesting.
These little swaps can instantly elevate your language or make it more approachable.
Okay, so it's not just about using fancy words.
Right.
It's about understanding which words fit the situation.
Exactly. It's about matching your vocabulary to the context and to the person that you're speaking with. And it goes beyond individual words.
Okay.
Sentence structure plays a big role as well.
Sentence structure.
Yeah, the formal language tends towards longer, more complex sentences,
Okay.
often using the passive voice.
Like the report was submitted by the deadline.
Yes.
Instead of I sent in the report on time.
That's a great example. The first one feels detached and objective, right?
Yeah.
More appropriate maybe for formal reports or academic writing.
Yeah.
Informal language, though, it embraces contractions and phrasal verbs. It has a more relaxed conversational flow.
Yeah.
It's about creating that sense of connection, immediacy.
And of course, we can't forget about punctuation and greetings.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, obviously, Dear Mr. Johnson versus Hey, Alex is a pretty clear distinction.
Right.
But what about the subtle stuff?
That's where it gets interesting. Even something as simple as how you sign off an email.
Oh.
Sincerely versus best.
Yeah.
Can convey a lot about your relationship with the recipient.
Right.
And the tone of the message. It's like the finishing touch that sets the seal on the whole communication.
So how do we put all this knowledge into practice?
Well,
it's one thing to understand the theory, but
yeah.
how do we actually use it in different situations?
Right. Well, that's where context comes in. Fluent Conversations did a good job at breaking it down,
Okay.
by looking at specific situations.
Okay.
Like emails or meetings or even casual chats.
That's super helpful. So let's start with emails. I feel like those can be tricky.
Oh, yeah.
Because you want to sound professional, but not like stiff,
Where emails often straddle that line between formal and informal.
Right.
You're not writing a legal document.
Yeah.
But you're also not texting your best friend.
Yeah.
So the podcast really emphasized, polite greetings,
Okay.
maintaining a professional tone throughout, and avoiding slang or like overly casual abbreviations.
So no, hey dude, what's up? It's my boss.
Probably a good idea to avoid that, yeah.
Okay, good rule of thumb. What about meetings and presentations?
Yeah.
Those feel like they're more on the formal end of the spectrum.
They often are, especially in professional settings.
Yeah.
The podcast really highlighted the importance of using transitional words and phrases
Okay.
to guide the listener through your ideas.
Okay.
Things like, furthermore, in addition, on the other hand, these little words can make your presentation sound much more structured and polished.
It's like you're building a case almost.
Exactly.
Leading them to your conclusion.
Right. And, those polite phrases we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
like, could we possibly discuss, or I'd like to propose,
Yeah.
those become even more important in these kind of settings.
Right.
Shows respect for everybody's time and input.
Okay, so we've covered emails and meetings. What about more casual interactions?
Sure.
Like friendly chats or texts?
Yeah, that's where you can loosen up a bit,
Okay.
Contractions, phrasal verbs, even emojis are all fair game.
Right.
Depending on your relationship with the person.
But how do you make sure that you're not crossing the line?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I once accidentally called my professor dude in an email.
Oh, no.
Oh, I wanted to die.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
I think the key is just being really mindful of your audience and the overall context.
Context.
Yeah. It's like choosing the right outfit, right?
Okay.
You wouldn't wear a ball gown to a backyard barbecue.
Right.
And you wouldn't show up to a job interview in sweatpants.
That's a great analogy.
So it's all about matching your communication style to the situation.
But Fluent Conversations also warn about some common pitfalls
Oh, yeah, for sure.
that we can fall into even when we're trying to be careful.
Right. One of the biggest ones is overusing fancy words.
Oh, yeah.
It's tempting to try and sound impressive,
Oh, totally.
but sometimes a simple word is way more effective than a complex one.
Right.
Clarity should always be the goal.
It's like, don't use a $5 word when a 50-cent word will do.
Exactly. Another common pitfall is mixing formal and informal language
Uh-oh.
at the wrong time.
Right.
It creates this jarring effect, like hearing a classical pianist suddenly break into a rap song.
Oh, I'm cringing just thinking about it.
And, the podcast also mentioned cultural differences,
Oh, right.
which is something I hadn't really considered before.
Yeah.
That's a crucial element,
Yeah.
What's considered polite and respectful in one culture could be seen as overly formal
Right.
or even rude in another.
Wow.
For example, in some cultures, it's totally normal to address people by their first names, even in a professional setting.
Yeah.
But in other cultures, using titles and last names is essential even when you know the person well.
So it's not just about knowing the rules of English.
Right.
It's about understanding the cultural context as well.
It does. It adds a whole other layer of complexity,
Totally.
but it also makes communication so much more interesting.
Right.
It's about bridging those cultural gaps and finding ways to connect authentically.
I like that perspective. So we've talked about the pitfalls. What are some strategies for avoiding them? Is it just practice? Practice.
Absolutely. Practice is key.
Okay.
Fluent Conversations had some great suggestions like rereading emails before you send them,
Okay.
getting feedback from like a trusted colleague or friend,
Yeah.
and even role-playing different situations
Okay.
to get comfortable with both formal and informal styles.
I remember they also suggested that role play exercise.
Oh, yeah.
where you write a formal email and then an informal text message about the same topic.
Yes.
Have you tried that one yet?
Oh, yeah.
It was
How'd it go?
it was challenging, but it was really eye-opening.
Interesting. I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, so I decided to use the scenario of asking for a deadline extension.
Okay, classic.
Yeah, right. So for the formal email to my professor, I channeled everything we talked about.
Okay, let me guess. Polite greetings, clear explanation, respectful tone.
Exactly. Yeah, it felt like I was stepping into a different persona.
It's interesting how language can do that, right? Like we can embody different roles just by changing the way we speak.
Yeah, and then writing the informal text to a friend about running late because of that same deadline.
Uh-huh.
It was like switching from a waltz to a hip-hop dance.
I bet what stood out to you the most, writing in those two contrasting styles.
It made me realize just how much we adjust our language without even thinking about it,
Yeah, it's subconscious.
Right, but being conscious of those choices
Right.
gives you this whole new level of control.
Yeah, that awareness is what makes a good communicator a great communicator.
Yeah, Fluent Conversations also mentioned how formal versus informal language has evolved over time.
Oh, that's a fascinating topic.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's crazy how language is like this living, breathing thing.
It is.
Constantly changing.
Yeah, the Nutcast talked about how centuries ago, formal language was so much more elaborate and ornate.
Right. Makes you appreciate how simple things are now.
Well, simpler, maybe, but also more nuanced,
That's true.
Think about all the changes we've seen with technology and the internet and mass media.
Right.
They've all had such a profound impact on the way we communicate.
Yeah.
Like the lines between formal and informal are constantly being blurred.
Totally. Like emojis and internet slang and abbreviations have become a part of everyday language.
It really makes you wonder what future historians will make of it all.
I know. It's kind of wild to think about.
Yeah, it shows how language is this reflection of our culture and values. What we see as acceptable now might have been unthinkable a few decades ago.
So how do we make sure we're communicating effectively in this constantly evolving landscape?
That's the question, isn't it? It feels like the rules are always changing.
Right.
I don't know if the rules are changing, but I think they're definitely expanding.
Okay. Yeah.
The key is to just stay curious and adaptable.
Okay.
Pay attention to how language is used in different situations.
Yeah.
Whether it's a news article or a social media post. Notice the nuances, the subtle shifts in tone and vocabulary.
So it's like we're all lifelong students of language.
We are.
Always observing and learning.
Exactly. And, Fluent Conversations reminded us that it's not about being right or wrong.
Right.
It's about using language as a tool to connect with others.
That's a good point. This whole deep dive has just been a great reminder that even something as familiar as language can still have hidden depths
It can.
and complexities. And by being more mindful of our choices, we can all become more effective communicators. We can build stronger relationships and just navigate the world with more confidence,
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, I think that's a great place to wrap up.
I think so too.
So listeners, remember, language is power.
It is.
Wield it wisely and watch your world expand.